This happened last Christmas, and honestly, it still feels surreal. I never expected my own family to treat me this way, but here we are. And looking back, I think I made the best decision of my life. I'm 32M, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the one holding my family together. My parents aren't exactly the most supportive people, and my older brother, Jake, 35M, is their golden child, the one who can do no wrong, even when he repeatedly screws up. Despite that, I've always done my best to help him. I covered his rent when he was on the verge of eviction, paid for his kids' school fees, and even helped with his car payments. It wasn't because I had money to throw around, I don't, but because I loved my nieces and nephews, and I didn't want them to suffer for Jake's mistakes. Still, I thought maybe this Christmas would be different. Maybe this time we could just be a family without drama. I had everything planned, gifts carefully picked out, Christmas music queued up, and for once, I was actually looking forward to seeing everyone. I loaded my car with present stuff for my parents, my brother, his wife Sarah, and most importantly, their kids. I went all out for them, buying extra gifts just to make sure they had a magical Christmas. The drive over was full of anticipation, but the moment I arrived, I realized something was off. Sarah opened the door, but instead of the usual warm greeting, she looked uncomfortable. Before I could say anything, Jake stepped in front of her, blocking the doorway with a smug grin. "You're not welcome here, Adam," he said. I blinked, thinking I misheard. "What? You heard me." His arms folded across his chest. "Christmas isn't a place for selfish people who only think about themselves. You're not pulling your weight anymore, and we're sick of it." I just stood there, stunned, the cold biting at my skin as I held onto the bags of gifts. My hands tightened around the handles, the weight suddenly feeling much heavier. I looked over at my parents, silently begging them to step in. My mom avoided my gaze. My dad busied himself in the kitchen, pretending not to notice. That should have been my first clue. "What the hell are you talking about?" I finally managed. Jake scoffed. "You moved into your own place, started living your little life, and now you act like you don't need us." "But family is about supporting each other, Adam, and you're not supporting us anymore." I nearly laughed at the absurdity. "Are you serious? I've been bailing you out for years." "I paid your rent, covered your bills, made sure your kids had what they needed. But now I'm selfish because I bought a place for myself?" Jake's smirk deepened. "If you really cared about us, you wouldn't have wasted your money on yourself." That was it. That was the moment. Something inside me snapped. I dropped the gift bags on the porch and met his eyes, voice steady. "You know what? Fine. Enjoy your Christmas. Don't expect to hear from me again." I turned, got in my car, and drove away. No yelling, no fighting, just done. But the drive home wasn't quiet. My mind was screaming. The betrayal, the audacity, the way my own parents just stood there like I didn't even matter. The gifts in the back seat felt like a cruel joke. Weeks of thoughtful shopping, all for people who didn't even want me there. By the time I got home, my chest was tight with anger. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, replaying everything in my head. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became this wasn't new. Jake had always been their favorite. He could screw up, slack off, and my parents would make excuses. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the responsible one, the provider. And when I finally did something for myself, that was my crime. That night, I spent Christmas alone. It sucked at first. I tried distracting myself with movies and takeout, but the weight of what had happened lingered. Still, by the end of the night, something strange happened. I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't worried about Jake's bills. I wasn't trying to keep my parents happy. I was just existing. And somehow, that felt like a gift in itself. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a message from my mom. "We need to talk. Please meet us." I stared at it, debating whether I should even respond. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to keep moving forward without looking back. But another part, the part still craving answers, decided to hear them out. So, I agreed to meet. I should have known it wouldn't go the way I hoped. I wasn't in a rush to meet them. If they wanted to talk so badly, they could wait. So I took my time, showed up 20 minutes late, and walked into the diner like I wasn't the one being summoned. Mom and Dad were already there, sitting in a booth near the window. They looked tense, like they'd been arguing before I arrived. Mom had her hands wrapped around a coffee cup, fingers twitching against the ceramic. Dad was staring out the window, probably hoping a miracle would get him out of this conversation. I slid into the seat across from them. All right, I said, leaning back. What's this about? Mom immediately jumped in, her voice soft like she was trying to soothe a wild animal. We didn't mean for things to get so out of hand. Jake was just emotional. I raised an eyebrow. Emotional? That's what we're calling it? Kicking me out of Christmas wasn't emotional, Mom. It was deliberate. Dad sighed, rubbing his temples like this whole thing was exhausting for him. Look, Adam, we didn't agree with everything Jake said, but you let him say it, I cut in. You didn't stop him. You didn't defend me. You just stood there. That shut them up for a second. Mom fiddled with her cup, and Dad kept looking anywhere but at me. Finally, Mom spoke again. It's not that simple. I folded my arms. Make it simple. She took a deep breath. It just feels like you've pulled away. You bought that apartment and your priorities shifted. You used to be so supportive of the family, always helping out when Jake needed it. But now. She trailed off, but I got the message loud and clear. But now what? I pressed. I'm selfish because I finally did something for myself? Because I stopped handing over money every time Jake screws up? Mom winced. It's not about the money. I laughed, shaking my head. It's always about the money. Dad finally decided to contribute. We're not saying you're a bad person, Adam, but Jake's had a rough couple of years. You know how hard it's been for him to keep a job. Yeah, I shot back. Because he doesn't try to keep one. He hops from gig to gig, blows through whatever money he makes, then comes crying to me. And you let him, Mom bristled. He's doing his best. He has a family to take care of. And whose fault is that? I countered. Not mine. He chose to get married. He chose to have kids. But somehow, I'm the one paying for it. Her face flushed, and I could tell she was getting frustrated. Families help each other, Adam. That's what we do. No, that's what I do, I corrected. I've bailed him out more times than I can count, and you've let him use me. And now you're mad because I finally said no. Dad's voice took on that familiar disappointed edge. We just thought you'd understand that Jake needs support right now, I scoffed. Support? He needs a reality check. I leaned forward, meeting their eyes. You treat him like he's some saint, and I'm just the wallet. You didn't even question him when he kicked me out of Christmas. You just went along with it. Mom opened her mouth, but I wasn't done. And what about my apartment? Why is that such a big deal? It's not like I bought a mansion. It's a one-bedroom in a crappy part of town. But suddenly, I'm the villain because I wanted a place to live? Mom let out a heavy sigh, like she was tired of this conversation. It's not about the apartment itself, Adam. It's about what it represents. You've always been there for us, for Jake. But now it feels like you're pulling away. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Maybe I am pulling away. Maybe I'm sick of being treated like I owe you something. I worked my ass off for that apartment, and I'm not going to apologize for wanting something for myself. Dad tried to play peacemaker again. We're not asking you to apologize. We just want you to understand that Jake's family is struggling, and they need your help. No, I said, my voice firm. They need your help. I've done more than enough for them. If you're so worried about Jake, you help him. I'm out. Mom's face hardened, and I could see the shift she was done pretending to be the reasonable one. Fine, she said quietly. If that's how you feel, it is, I said, standing up, and I'm done feeling guilty about it. Enjoy your golden child. I tossed some cash on the table for my coffee and walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't care if they called after me. I was done. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. The silence that followed was deafening. No calls, no texts, no guilt-tripping messages. It was like I had been given a break from a toxic job I didn't even know I'd signed up for. And I loved it. The first few days felt weird, though. There were moments when I'd instinctively reach for my phone to check in or send a message, only to remember there was no one to check in with, no one worth messaging. Then, about a week later, I started hearing from mutual friends. Apparently, my parents were telling people I had abandoned them, that I had turned my back on family for no reason, that I was cold, ungrateful, heartless. Jake, of course, was leading the charge, playing the victim like he was auditioning for an Oscar. Can you believe Adam just walked away from his family? He'd say. After everything we've been through together, it's like he doesn't even care about us. Hearing that pissed me off, but it didn't surprise me. Jake had always been great at spinning stories to make himself look like the hero or, in this case, the poor, misunderstood brother. What did surprise me was how quickly people bought into it. A couple of friends reached out, basically asking what the hell was going on. One of them, Jared, texted me, "Dude, your parents said you're not talking to them anymore. Something about you being upset over Christmas? What's up with that?" I thought about ignoring it, but Jared wasn't just some random acquaintance. He actually cared. So I called him back and laid it all out: the years of being used, the constant guilt trips, the way my family always put Jake on a pedestal while treating me like an ATM. When I finished, Jared was silent for a second before saying, "Dude, that's messed up." I had no idea it was like that. "Yeah, well," I said, trying to play it off. "I guess one finally hit my limit." "Can't blame you," he said. "If I were in your shoes, I'd probably do the same thing." That conversation made me feel a little better. Like maybe I wasn't crazy after all. But for every Jared, there were two other people who bought my parents' sob story. I started seeing vague, passive aggressive posts on Facebook from some of my extended family. Stuff like family should always come first, no matter what, and some people forget who's been there for them. It was so obvious who they were talking about that it almost made me laugh. I thought about responding, about setting the record straight. But then I realized I didn't owe them an explanation. Let them believe whatever they wanted. I was done defending myself. And as it turned out, I had much bigger things to worry about. Because the next call I got, it wasn't from my family, it was from a lawyer. A random Tuesday afternoon, I was mid-scroll through some mindless app when my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something told me to pick up. "Hello? Is this Adam?" The voice on the other end was serious, professional. Yeah. Who's this? My name is Brian. I'm a lawyer representing Sarah. Do you have a moment to discuss some legal matters involving your family? Sarah, my brother's wife? Why the hell would she need a lawyer? Yeah, sure, I said cautiously. What's going on? There was a slight pause before he dropped it. Sarah has reason to believe that Jake has been engaging in illegal activities, and your financial transactions with him might be relevant to an ongoing investigation. I froze. Wait, what? We believe Jake has been purchasing stolen goods and reselling them. Electronics, car parts, high-value items. There's also evidence suggesting he may have used the funds from family members, including you, to facilitate these transactions. I felt my stomach drop. Illegal activities? I knew Jake was a screw-up, but I never thought he was criminally stupid. Hold on, I said, my grip tightening on my phone. Are you telling me I'm connected to this? Brian's tone remained calm. Your name appears in multiple financial transfers to Jake over the years. If law enforcement looks into his records, they may have questions about whether you were aware of how that money was being used. I shot up from my chair, pacing. I wasn't. I thought I was helping with rent, bills, the kids' school fees. I had no idea he was doing anything shady. We understand that, Brian said. Sarah has already provided evidence, including financial records and text messages. She has made it clear that neither she nor you had any knowledge of his actions. However, I wanted to inform you in case this escalates into a larger legal issue. I ran a hand through my hair, my pulse hammering. So what happens now? Am I in trouble? At this point, you're not under investigation, Brian reassured me. But if law enforcement contacts you, I advise full transparency about your interactions with Jake. We're working to protect Sarah and the children, and as long as you weren't complicit, you shouldn't have any legal liability. Great. So I spent years bailing out my brother, and now I might get dragged into his mess. After we hung up, I sat there staring at nothing, my mind racing. Every single time Jake had come to me with some sob story about needing help, I believed him. Was any of it even real? Had he just been stringing me along the whole time? And Sarah, Jesus, I felt bad for her. She'd always been quiet, going along with whatever Jake wanted. But I couldn't imagine what it must have been like for her to find out her husband was mixed up in illegal crap. And the kids, they didn't deserve any of this. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, worst case scenarios played out in my head. What if the cops showed up at my door? What if Jake somehow dragged me into this? By morning, I had my answer. I wasn't going to let him screw me over any more than he already had. I called Brian back. Send me everything Sarah has. If my name is attached to this mess, I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with. When the documents arrived, I felt my blood boil all over again. There it was, in black and white. Bank statements, screenshots of shady transactions, receipts for stolen goods, and right there, next to them, my transfers. On paper, it almost looked like I had been funding his little side hustle. I called Brian again, voice steady but sharp. I need to make one thing clear. I had no idea what he was doing. I thought I was helping with bills and groceries. Brian remained professional. Understood. But if this turns into a legal case, law enforcement may still ask you to testify. I let out a humorless laugh. Fantastic. The rest of the day, I couldn't sit still. Anger, frustration, and panic kept my nerves buzzing. I kept thinking about all the years I had been guilt-tripped into helping him, all the sacrifices I made while he was out here pulling scams. Then, as if on cue, he showed up at my door. The banging was loud. Not knocking, banging. I already knew who it was before I even opened it. Sure enough, there was Jake, looking like absolute hell. His hair was a mess. His eyes were bloodshot, and he had the nerve to push past me the second I cracked the door open. What the hell, man? I snapped, slamming the door shut behind him. We need to talk, he said, pacing my living room like a caged animal. No, we don't. I crossed my arms. Whatever mess you're in, I'm not part of it. He stopped pacing, turning to me with wild eyes. Sarah's leaving me. His voice cracked, like I was supposed to feel sorry for him. Yeah, I know. I leaned against the wall, arms still crossed. And good for her. That hit a nerve. His face turned red, and his hands clenched into fists like he was about to start swinging. What the hell is your problem, Adam? She's my wife. She's supposed to stand by me. I let out a sharp laugh. Stand by you while you're buying stolen crap? While you're dragging her and the kids into your bullshit? Yeah, no. I think she's making the right call. His jaw tightened. She's been talking to you, hasn't she? Filling your head with lies. I rolled my eyes. She didn't have to tell me anything. Your own actions are screwing you over. He started pacing again, dragging his hands through his hair. You don't get it, man. She's talking about lawyers, custody. And now cops are sniffing around because of some stupid mix-up with a few transactions mix-up? I interrupted. You mean the illegal crap you've been doing? That's not a mix-up, Jake. That's you being a selfish idiot. Now it's clear who the loser is. He glared at me, but I could see the fear behind the anger. You don't know what it's like, Adam. Trying to keep a family together. Trying to make ends meet. I stared at him, feeling nothing but exhaustion. Don't even start. I've been helping you make ends meet for years, and this is what you did with it. So don't stand there and act like I don't get it. For a moment, he looked like he was going to argue. But then, he just slumped into one of my chairs, burying his face in his hands. I didn't mean for it to get this bad, he muttered. I thought I could fix everything. I shook my head. You didn't fix anything. You made it worse. Silence stretched between us. Then, finally, he looked up at me. You're my brother, Adam. Can't you help me one last time? I laughed, and not in a nice way. One last time? You've been saying that for years. Every time you screw up, it's always one last time. Well, guess what? I'm done. You're on your own. His face went blank. You don't mean that. Oh, I do. I met his eyes. And this time, I actually mean it. Jake jumped to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Fine, he snapped. If you want to abandon your own family, go ahead. But don't come crying to me when you need something. I raised an eyebrow. Name one time I've needed anything from you. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. After a few seconds, he just stormed past me to the door. Screw you, Adam. Then he was gone. And for the first time in years, I wasn't cleaning up his mess. I stood there for a long time after Jake stormed out, staring at the door like it might suck all the toxicity out of my apartment. My heart was still racing, my hands still shaking. But underneath all of that, relief. I was done. For years, every mess Jake made somehow became my responsibility. Every time he called, I answered. Every time he begged, I caved. But not this time. This time, he was on his own. I grabbed a drink, sat on my couch, and let the silence sink in. No more guilt trips. No more texts asking for money. No more putting my life on hold so Jake could keep running from his own problems. And for the first time in forever, I didn't feel bad about it. A couple of days passed with no word from Jake. No angry texts, no calls, nothing. I half expected him to show up again, but he didn't. Maybe he finally understood that I meant it. Instead, I heard from Sarah. She texted me first, just a simple, "Hey, did Jake come by? He's been acting erratic, and I'm worried about what he might do." I told her everything, how he barged in, begged for help, tried to guilt trip me, how I shut him down. Her response came quick. "Thank you for standing your ground. He needs to face this, and I can't let him drag the kids down with him anymore." She didn't say it outright, but I could tell she was scared. Jake was unraveling, and no one knew what he was going to do next. Then, about a week later, she texted again. "Hey, can we talk? I need your help." For a moment, I hesitated. The whole reason I cut ties was to get away from this kind of thing. I didn't want to get pulled back in. But Sarah wasn't Jake. She never treated me like an ATM, never made me feel like I owed her something. And the kids, they didn't deserve any of this. So I agreed to meet. We met at a quiet coffee shop in the middle of the afternoon. When she walked in, she looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, stress weighing down her shoulders. But there was something else in her expression, too, determination. She sat down, skipped the small talk. "I'm leaving him," I nodded. "Good, it's about time." She gave me a weak smile, like she appreciated the support but wasn't quite ready to celebrate. "I've been thinking about it for a while, but after everything that's come out, I can't stay. Not for him, not for the kids." I leaned back. "What's the plan?" She hesitated, fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I found a new place. It's small, but it's in a good neighborhood, good schools. The kids deserve a fresh start, away from all this." I could already see where this was going. "But you need help to make it happen," I said. She nodded, looking embarrassed. "I hate to ask, Adam, especially after everything you've been through with him. But between lawyers, moving expenses, and trying to make sure the kids are okay, I'm stretched so thin. I don't have a lot of options." I let out a slow breath, thinking. A big part of me wanted to say no. I had just barely freed myself from this mess, and now I was being asked to jump back in. But this wasn't Jake. This wasn't about enabling someone who refused to help themselves. This was about making sure Sarah and the kids got out. I sighed. "All right, I'll help. But just this once. And only for you and the kids." Jake's on his own. Her eyes filled with tears, and she reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Thank you, Adam. You don't know what this means to me." We spent the next hour going over details, what she needed, how soon she could leave, what it would take to make sure she and the kids were safe. That night, I sent her the money she needed for a deposit and some essentials. And for the first time in a long time, giving didn't feel like being used. A few days later, she sent me a text. "We're leaving today. Thank you for everything." I told her to keep me updated. She did. Every now and then, she'd send a quick message about how the kids were adjusting, how she was looking for a new job, how she was finally starting to breathe again. She was on the right track. Jake, on the other hand, was falling apart. It didn't happen overnight, but eventually, the weight of everything caught up to him. The stolen goods, the money transfers, the transactions law enforcement had been piecing it together for months. And then, one day, I got a text from Sarah. They arrested him. I stared at my phone, rereading the message. Finally, she sent a few more details. The charges were serious. Possession and distribution of stolen property, multiple counts. He was being held without bail. For years, Jake had been skating by, avoiding real consequences. But now, he was out of chances. And just like that, my parents came crawling back. It started with a voicemail from my mom. "Adam," she said, her voice shaking, "please call us back. It's about Jake. He's in serious trouble and we need your help." I rolled my eyes and deleted it. The next day, another voicemail. This time from my dad. "Son, I know you're upset with us, but Jake is still your brother. He made mistakes, sure, but he needs us now more than ever. Please, just call us back." Nope. Then came the texts. Mom was practically begging me. You know Jake's not a bad person. He just got mixed up with the wrong people. We can fix this if we work together. Dad's messages were more guilt-trippy. Do you really want your brother to rot in jail? Family doesn't turn their back on each other. At first, I was furious. Even now, after everything, they were still making excuses for him, still expecting me to clean up his mess. But then, the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. This wasn't new. This was just who they were. They had always coddled Jake, always made excuses, always put his needs above everyone else's. And now, this was just another chapter in the same sad story. So I sent one final text to the group chat they'd started bombarding me with. I'm not helping Jake. He made his choices, and now he's facing the consequences. Don't contact me about this again. I didn't get a response. A few months later, Jake's case went to trial. I didn't follow it too closely, but Sarah kept me updated. Apparently, he tried to play dumb, claimed he had no idea the goods were stolen, that he was just an innocent middleman. But the prosecution had mountains of evidence. Bank records, text messages, even recorded phone calls. He didn't stand a chance. He got sentenced to several years in prison. No possibility of parole for at least half that time. Sarah told me he cried in court when the verdict was read. I didn't feel sorry for him. He had every opportunity to turn his life around, and he wasted all of them. As for me, life moved on. Sarah and the kids were doing well. She found a steady job, got settled into their new place. Every now and then, she'd send me a text or a picture of the kids, just to let me know they were okay. My parents tried reaching out a few more times, but I ignored them. They made their choices. And now, they were stuck with them. It's been over a year now since I last spoke to any of them. And honestly, I don't miss it. My life is quieter, calmer, better. Cutting them off was the hardest thing I ever did. But it was also the best decision I ever made. Jake's still in prison. My parents are probably still stewing about how ungrateful I am. And me? I'm living my life. And I'm perfectly fine with that. The silence that followed was strange. After years of chaos, my life suddenly felt still. No guilt-tripping texts, no frantic calls, no more weight on my shoulders. At first, I didn't know what to do with it. I kept waiting for the next crisis, the next plea, the next round of emotional manipulation. But it never came. My parents must have finally realized I meant it when I told them I was done. And Jake? Well, there was no reaching out from prison. It should have felt freeing. And in a way, it did. But there were moments fleeting, rare where the old habits kicked in. Like when I'd hear something funny and instinctively think, Mom would love this joke, only to remember I wasn't talking to her anymore. Or when I'd come across an old photo of Jake and me as kids and wonder how the hell we ended up here. But I never let those thoughts drag me back. I reminded myself that missing the idea of family wasn't the same as missing them. A few months passed. Work kept me busy. I reconnected with old friends, started focusing on myself for the first time in years. I was finally living my own life, not one dictated by guilt or obligation. Then one day I got a text from Sarah. Hey, I know it's been a while, but I wanted to say thank you again. I don't think I ever told you how much it meant everything you did for me and the kids. We're doing really well. The kids are happier than I've ever seen them. She attached a picture, her two little ones, grinning like they didn't have a care in the world. I stared at the image longer than I meant to. It hit me all at once that this was the only good thing that came out of all the years I spent trying to fix Jake's life. At least they got out. I texted back, I'm glad you're all doing well. You deserve it, she responded almost immediately. So do you, Adam? And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed it. Jake's sentencing came and went without much fanfare. Sarah told me he tried to reach out to her, begging for another chance, but she shut him down fast. I'm not falling for it again, she told me over the phone one evening. Not this time. She asked if I had heard from our parents. Nope, I said, poking at my dinner with a fork. I think they finally gave up. She hesitated. I ran into your mom at the store last week. That made me pause. Oh, she asked about you, Sarah said carefully. Didn't say much, but I could tell she misses you. I let out a humorless laugh. She only misses me because Jake's gone, and she has no one left to clean up his messes. Sarah sighed. Maybe. Or maybe she's just realizing what she lost. I didn't respond to that. Because the truth was, I didn't care. Maybe Mom missed me. Maybe she regretted how everything went down. But it was too late. She made her choice when she stood by Jake and let him treat me like I was disposable. Some things you can't come back from. The next time I heard Jake's name, it was from Jared. We were out grabbing drinks when he casually mentioned, "Oh, by the way, ran into someone who used to know your brother." I stiffened. Yeah? Yeah. Apparently, he's not doing too hot in there. Jared took a sip of his beer. He got into some trouble early on. Had a hard time adjusting. Not exactly thriving. I wasn't sure how to feel about that. I wasn't surprised. Jake had spent his whole life avoiding consequences now. For the first time, he had to face them head on. I didn't say anything, just nodded. Jared studied me for a second. You don't feel bad for him, do you? I thought about it. About all the times I bailed him out, all the money I handed over, all the moments I spent worrying about how to fix his problems, about how he never once stopped to think about how any of it affected me. No, I said finally. I really don't. Jared nodded like he expected that. Fair enough. And that was the end of that conversation. Jake had made his choices. Now he was living with them. More time passed. Life settled into something normal. No sudden phone calls demanding I drop everything to save someone from their own stupidity. No feeling like I was carrying the weight of an entire family on my shoulders. And then, one afternoon, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a notification popped up. I stared at it for a long time before finally pressing play. Adam. Mom's voice was quiet, hesitant. I know you don't want to hear from me. And I get it, I really do. But I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything, for how we treated you, for not standing up for you when we should have, for letting it get this bad, she sniffled, then exhaled shakily. I don't expect you to forgive us. I don't even expect you to call back. I just needed you to know we were wrong, and I'm sorry. The message ended. I sat there, phone in hand, replaying it in my head. Did she really mean it? Or was this just another attempt to pull me back in? I thought about calling her, thought about not calling her. In the end, I just deleted the message and moved on with my day. Because some apologies come too late, and I wasn't looking back anymore. A year passed. I never reached out. She never tried again. Jake was still in prison. My parents were still stuck in their version of reality. And me? I was finally, truly free. A year passed. And for the first time in my life, my days belonged to me. No more family drama, no more financial black holes, no more guilt that wasn't mine to carry. At first, the quiet felt unnatural. After years of living under constant stress, my brain almost craved the chaos, like a bad habit I couldn't shake. But little by little, I adjusted. I started filling the empty spaces with things that actually mattered, hobbies I'd abandoned, friendships I'd neglected, goals I'd put on hold for the sake of everyone but me. And you know what? My life got better. I got a promotion at work, finally took a trip I'd been putting off for years, and even adopted a dog, a goofy mutt named Rocky, who turned out to be the best decision I'd made in a long time. It felt good. I felt good. Then, one day, I got another message from Sarah. Hey, just wanted to share some good news. The divorce is finalized. It's over. I stared at my phone for a second before responding. That's amazing. How do you feel? Her reply came quick. Relieved. Free. Like I can finally breathe again. I smiled. I knew exactly what she meant. She sent a picture of the kids, standing in front of their new school, grinning ear to ear. They're doing so well, Adam. You really helped make this happen. I just wanted you to know that. I didn't know what to say to that, so I kept it simple. I'm really happy for you. And I meant it. Jake, on the other hand, wasn't doing so great. I hadn't heard from him, obviously, but Sarah still got updates from his lawyer every now and then. He was struggling in prison, bouncing between fights and bad decisions, just like he had on the outside. One day, she told me he was trying to get his sentence reduced. I guess he's hoping for an early release, she said over the phone. But with his record, not likely. I barely reacted. At this point, Jake's life was so far removed from mine that it didn't even register as my problem anymore. Let me guess, I said, leaning back on my couch. Mom and Dad are trying to help him? Of course, Sarah sighed. They're pushing every legal angle they can, but honestly, I don't think it's going anywhere. I shook my head. They'll never learn. Nope, she agreed. But at least we did. And that was that. A few months later, I got one final message from my parents. It was from Mom's number, but I could tell they had both written it together. We know you don't want to talk to us, and we respect that. But we just wanted to say that we love you. No matter what. I stared at it for a long time, not because it changed anything, not because I was considering going back, but because, for the first time, there was no manipulation, no guilt. Just a simple statement. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. And now? Now, life is mine. Sarah and I still talk sometimes, mostly just quick updates about the kids. Jared and I hang out more. I've even started dating again, not seriously, but enough to remind myself that I'm allowed to want things for myself. I don't miss my old life, not even a little. Jake is still in prison. My parents are still waiting for a son who isn't coming back. And me? I wake up every day without feeling like the world is on my shoulders. And that, more than anything, tells me I made the right choice. I'm free, and I'm never looking back. Story 2. His cheating fiancé screwed a DJ is the title of this tale. Our wedding is one day away. I thus abandoned her at the altar and departed with her sexy bridesmaid. Okay, folks, this is going to be a lengthy one throwaway account for obvious reasons. I'm a 32-year-old man. I never imagined that I would be among the men who write on Reddit about romantic drama, but my life has been nothing short of a vengeance movie over the past several months. Before I start talking about the complete mess that was my wedding day, or, I suppose, my almost wedding day, I'll tell you the history. Val and I had so been dating for 3 years. At my friend Mike's house party, I got to know her. One of those, you must come dude. You'll typically wind up standing in the corner sipping beer and looking at your phone during these epic-style events. However, things were different this time. Val was this absolute smoke show. Pharmaceutical representative. I understand how that may seem, but I'm being straightforward here. Good score of 9 out of 10. Depending on the source, it may even be a 10. A great physique with long, dark hair. She did CrossFit, yes. How did you guess? I was out of my league, and this smile actually made other males walk into walls. If I'm telling the truth, on a good day, I'm around a solid 6. And if I'm dressed well and the lighting is nice, I may even be 7. I still recall the first time I saw her. Mike and she were fighting over a television program. It was becoming really awful. I suppose my first warning sign should have been that she was Team Walter White all the way through. And I just kind of stepped into the discussion. Before I know it, we've been discussing everything from drugs and sports to whether or not pineapple belongs on pizza for 3 hours. I'm not fought by it. At the end of the night, I got her number. The following weekend, I took her out, and that was about it. Sometimes you simply click with someone, don't you? Like, everything is so simple, correct? Yes, we were like that. That's what I believed anyhow. After 3 years, I felt that our relationship was doing pretty darn well. After a year, we moved in together, got a downtown apartment that was just beyond of our price range. Before everything went to wrong, I adopted this jerk of a cat named Zeus, who detested everyone but herself, and began constructing what I believed would be our life together. I gave it my all. I took care of the small things. Flowers at random, just for fun. Unexpected. Coffee is delivered to her workplace, and adorable messages are left about the flat. Every unique event, you wager. I really went all out, anniversaries and birthdays. The stupid tiny monthly ones, too. I made sure she felt loved at the beginning. She enjoyed upscale items. And while I may have complained about it, I still managed to make it happen. Because when you love someone, you do that. I believed that I was creating memories, creating something tangible, and establishing the groundwork for our future. I proposed last year at this fancy rooftop restaurant, spent around 3 months' worth of pay on the ring. Yes, I am aware of it, but I wanted to please her because she had high-end tastes. Yes, she answered, crying. Uploaded almost 50 photos on Instagram. The normal things, She said in her post that she had met her true love and was eager to spend the rest of her life with them. Well, that matured like milk in a hot vehicle. There was a lot of planning involved in the wedding. I won't lie, Val want perfection in everything. And I mean it when I say perfect. We're talking about more than 200 people. Fancy venue at this historic hotel downtown. Dinner is served in 5 courses. Open bar on the top tier. The process. The expense was greatly assisted by her parents. Even while we are grateful for it today, it was still making a significant impact on our savings. But I didn't mind. All I felt was joy. She was content. Do you know? I mean, having a cookout after being married at the courthouse would have been awesome. However, I wanted to give her the wedding of her dreams. In addition, I can see how thrilled she is about cake sampling, floral arrangements, and whatever the fuck a charger plate is. It was adorable. After work, she would spend hours on Pinterest, showcasing all of these ideas and getting excited about each and every detail. Everything was moving too easily. Now looking back, it should have been obvious to me that something would go wrong. The strange thing is that I still can't really say when I first started to feel strange. It was like, have you ever had the feeling that something is off, but you're not quite sure what it is? Like when you forget to turn off the stove before leaving for work. However, multiply that by a factor of 100. About a month prior to the wedding, I began to notice small details. At first, nothing significant. She was staying out later than usual and going out more with her friends, using her phone in an odd way. Every Reddit post about cheating is the same old shit. That stuff is ignored when you're in it, planning a fucking wedding and getting ready to start a life with someone. You justify yourself. All she's worried about is the wedding. She needs to release her tension. Man, I'm being paranoid. I was a complete fool. About 10 days before to the wedding, Val informs me that she would be attending this girls' night at Warehouse 13. If you're not from the area, Warehouse 13 is this enormous, repurposed industrial building where these enormous parties are held. Like the kind of place you enter at 11 o'clock at night. Subsequently, it is 6 a.m. and you've lost a shoe type thing. At first, I didn't give it much thought. Val had been worried out about the wedding, or so I thought. And her friends wanted to do this kind of pre-bachelorette party thing since her actual bachelorette was going to be pretty tame wine tasting with her mom and aunts there. You know how it goes. Plus, her best friend Megan was supposedly the one organizing it, and Megan's usually pretty responsible. Usually Val gets all suited up for this stuff. And when I say dressed up, I mean like festival wear type things, tiny crop top, those glittery high-waisted shorts that practically display your whole ass glitter everywhere. I remember joking like, dang, trying to find husband Hubbard too already, and she felt sort of strange about it but played it off. It should have been a warning sign, but I was still acting like a fool and still trusted my fiancé. She leaves at about 9 o'clock. With Megan and a couple other gals text me at midnight saying everything's wonderful. She is enjoying herself and misses me. All of that romantic nonsense. Then, until around 6:30 a.m., there was radio quiet. They said they lost track of time when she stumbled into the room. Her phone died. The typical justifications. I saw that part of her glitter makeup was smudged, but I suppose that's normal for a rave. False. So fucking incorrect. Fast forward to a week before the wedding. At work, I'm making an effort to concentrate on this project's due date, despite the fact that everything related to the wedding has left my head absolutely burned out. My phone is buzzing. Chris is my boy. Chris doesn't usually call during business hours unless there's a problem. I thus realized that this would not work well. He begins, and I can tell by the tone of his voice that I'm going to hear something that I'd rather not hear. Listen, guy, that night my cousin DJ was at Warehouse 13, and I didn't know how to tell you that. My fucking stomach fell. A DJ is a person who essentially observes everything, knows everyone, and lives in the rave environment. He reportedly witnessed a lot. DJ claims that Val wasn't only dancing with the females. This guy was the object of her attention. There's a DJ named Voltage, or something like that. Who the hell calls themselves Voltage, really? Not like regular dancing either? We are conversing, working, and figuring everything out. However, things improve. Even worse. Around 3 in the morning, the DJ noticed them vanish inside the DJ booth area. About 45 minutes later, they emerged. This electric jerk was looking so proud of himself while Val was mending her shorts. Very subtle, correct? I'm sitting in my office, trying not to punch a wall or throw up, or both. All I can hear is this ringing in my ears while Chris continues to speak. Do you know how it feels when everything in your universe suddenly changes? As if all you believed to be true were lies? Yes, that. There's more, though. Chris had previously done some research since he is the true MVP buddy that he is. Turns out this wasn't the first time Val had been to one of Voltage's. Demonstrates that he discovered images on Instagram from a few months ago. Val in the throng. In some, it's always right up front. I had never seen her wearing a glow-in-the-dark necklace before. Apparently, it's like a VIP thing that gets you access the DJ section. I was in a fog for the remainder of that day, simply browsing Facebook and Instagram like a maniacal investigator. More photos from that evening were discovered. In the backdrop of other people's narratives is Val. Getting to know this person really well, he is just what you would expect. Tall, tatted up, man bun wearing douche who probably thinks pressing play on a MacBook makes him a musician. The worst part in every pic, she wears her engagement ring in every video. The one she said was ideal. The one I had been saving for months. The one she had always dreamt about. I did not immediately confront her. Something in me suddenly exploded. We could play games if she wanted to. So I started making plans rather than losing it or confronting her. And I went into full detective mode because I was going to turn pro. Let me tell you, that shit hits you like a truck when you start genuinely looking for red flags rather than ignoring them. First thing I did was check our joint credit card statements. Yes, we had a combined wedding expenditure account. Another excellent choice. Found many charges from clubs and bars on nights. She was apparently wedding planning with her buddies. Like, unless David's nuptials relocation to a nightclub, something wasn't adding up. This is when Jessica enters the picture. Brief history. Although they weren't very close, Jessica was one of Val's bridesmaids. Val just asked her because it would have been embarrassing not to, and they worked together. I had always thought Jessica was a smoke show redhead, but I was faithful, unlike other people, so I didn't take any action. I decided to reach out to Jessica because she always looked clueless. Less caught up in Val's BBs than the other bridesmaids. Additionally, she had been behaving strangely throughout the previous wedding celebrations, as if she knew something but was unable to express it. I texted her, asking if she had a moment to chat. Val is the subject, she said. It turns out that Jessica had sensed something was wrong for weeks before they finally found it out. She was talking to this attractive DJ about whom Val had been boasting, showing her their trash and direct messages. But the point is, Val told Jessica that we had an arrangement and that I was fine with her having fun before the wedding. Please pardon me, what? Yes. My charming fiancé has been claiming to be upfront with everyone about our relationship. It's new to me. Jessica claims that in order to defend her hookup with Voltage, Val had been spreading this falsehood to a number of individuals. Also shown some of Jessica's texts in which she mentioned meeting up with him following their honeymoon. The fucking boldness. Jessica, however, had screenshots. South. Many screenshots. Val and Voltage have been texting one another for months. She informed me she was at a pharmaceutical conference in Vegas in March, so it seems they met at another party. Since then, they had been dating intermittently. But as the wedding drew nearer, their relationship became increasingly serious. A few of their text highlights. You will cringe at this shit, I warn you. Val is really excited to meet you this evening. Reserve a place for me in the booth. Voltage. Have a special gift for you, sweetie. Val. Better than the last time. Voltage. You are aware of it. Don't forget to bring your glittery attire. And my particular fave, Val. Before I have to be a decent wife, I'm kind of eager to be a naughty girl, haha. For 3 years of my life, I longed to vomit. $15,000 ring. This is her true opinion of our relationship, based on all of the plans we made. After enjoying herself, she had a dull duty to complete. Jessica was angry too. Evidently, Val had been ridiculing me in front of her other pals, referring to me as trustworthy and secure as if I were a fucking Honda Civic or something. Said she was settling down with me since I had a nice career and would be a good dad. With DJ stuff, she's out there having the time of her life at festivals. I began conspiring with Jessica at that point. I was done being the trustworthy fallback, and she was done with Val's two-faced lads. We went through all the evidence and made plans on how to address this for about 3 hours in this coffee shop. In fact, Jessica was the one who suggested that if she wanted a venue for her drama, she should wait until the wedding. She said, "Let's give her one she'll never forget." We made the decision to prepare everything. We received screenshots, pictures, and even a few videos from the event. It wouldn't be difficult to set up a lovely little presentation because Jessica had a buddy who handled AV at the venue. What was the highlight of this planning session, though? Watching Jessica become all heated up about exposing Val. It seemed to me that she had been anticipating this. She was talking about what a horrible person Val was at one point. Something connected between us as her eyes sparkled and her cheeks flushed. We both sensed it, that strain, the chemistry. However, we took no action. The days that followed were difficult. It felt like being in some kind of weird farce, to seem regular around Val while knowing all this garbage. She's there discussing our future, pointing out table settings and inquiring about our honeymoon plans. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking about how I'm going to blow her whole world apart. The most challenging aspect? In fact, she appeared to be looking forward to the wedding, as in, truly joyful. I would occasionally catch myself on the verge of feeling guilty about our plans. Then I'd recall those texts, that dazzling dress, and DJ douchebag arrogant face, and any guilt would simply vanish. Additionally, Jessica would send me another screenshot or mention something else Val had said behind my back whenever I began to doubt myself. Finding out that your fiancé deemed you dull in bed to her coworkers is the best way to stop compassion. 3 days remained till the wedding. And believe me when I say that it's difficult to pretend to be normal when planning someone's public humiliation. Val was rushing around, anxious about last-minute preparations, including clothing fittings, vendor calls, and other things. In the meantime, I'm working on what we started referring to as Operation Festival Fallout in covert meetings with Jessica and her AV friend Kyle. By the way, a quick shout out to Kyle. When Jessica told him what was happening, this guy was a living legend. He didn't merely consent to assist. He went all in. It became out that he had also been cheated on before. He therefore lived for this scheme of retaliation. He also knew exactly how to set everything up without appearing suspicious because he worked at the venue. It was a rather straightforward strategy. I would make a special toast to my new bride throughout the reception. Kyle would have screenshots, pictures, and even some videos that people had sent us from the rave queued up on the large screens at the venue. However, time was crucial. We needed to wait until all the important photos were done. The photographer was not someone I wanted to waste my parents' money on. And that poor guy undoubtedly spent a fortune on this wedding following her dad's speech. This is where Jessica's situation started to get interesting. We were planning and spending a lot of time together. I won't lie either. The intensity of the chemistry was growing. She was sitting so close to me that I could almost smell her perfume one evening while we were at my house going over the data on my laptop. It was also far superior to the cotton candy body spray Val usually wore, I must say. You know what would really drive her crazy if you kissed me right after exposing her, like right there in front of everyone, Jessica added, looking up at me. I won't lie, but I chuckled at her audacity. For a moment, my brain went into short circuit. Jessica was so hot. Green eyes and tall red hair. The type of female that naturally looks good. In contrast to Val, who looked at me while preparing to go to the grocery shop for 2 hours. But I played it cool. You sure you want to get engaged like that? You may also be judged by others. Trust me, I've been wanting to do this for months, she said with a sly smile. She treats you like a backup plan by talking about you to everyone. You're worthy of better. Then she put her hand on my leg and holy crap. The stress was unbelievable. However, we took no action. Not quite yet. We were both aware that we had to wait, make the retaliation even more delicious. The following several days were a haze of covert planning and wedding preparation. Val's incessant chatter about how wonderful everything would be and how we will be the greatest pair ever, among other things, was becoming more tiresome. She continues to text DJ douchebag in the meantime. In their group conversation, Jessica gave me screenshots of Val boasting that she will attempt to get together with him after the honeymoon. We had the rehearsal dinner the evening before the wedding. I nearly felt horrible after hearing Val's father's moving statement about embracing me into the family. Then, after dinner, I recalled all the screenshots of Val calling me safe and boring while slinking out to the restroom for the 10th time that evening. To ensure everything was in order, Jessica and I met with Kyle one last time. The slideshow was ready. The sound quality was flawless. Yeah, we had audio. The timing was meticulously arranged, and Val had left some really damning voicemails for Voltage. Jessica then revealed even another shocking revelation. She remarked nonchalantly, "I got a room at the hotel for tomorrow night. You know, in case you need somewhere to go after everything." The way she said it, looking up at me through her eyelids. Yes, she wasn't only providing a place to stay. And what do you know? I didn't even feel bad about the thoughts running through my mind after everything Val had done. Val was unconscious in our bed when I got home that evening, most likely after the rehearsal supper. There on the nightstand was her phone. Notifications are still being received. Voltage's name appeared. "After the honeymoon, I can't wait to see you, sweetie." That was the time. Any last questions? I had simply disappeared. Tomorrow wasn't only going to be the end of my romance with Val. This would be the start of something new. A better one. That night, I slept on the couch, in part because I couldn't bear to be near her, but mostly because I was too excited about what was going to happen. Jessica started emailing me jokes about retribution and karma, and we remained up late, organizing the final arrangements. "Tomorrow is going to be epic," was the final text I received from her that evening. "I hope you're prepared to play the lead in the most amazing wedding drama ever." She didn't realize how correct she was, man. The wedding morning felt unreal. F woke up on my couch, couldn't sleep close to Val after everything, and I momentarily lost track of the day. After that, my phone began to overflow with texts. "Val is sending me, adorable, can't wait to be your wife." I provide updates on Operation Festival Fallout to Jessica and my groomsmen via text. Arrived early at the location to check on Kyle. The man had surpassed himself. The wedding slideshow is set up on 3 enormous screens. The audio setup is flawless. Everything is prepared for use. As the last tech check was being performed, Jessica sneaked in wearing her bridesmaid dress and looked amazing. And let me tell you, Jessica looked stunning in her outfit, even though Val was the bride. "You ready for this?" With a look that made my heart skip a beat, she asked. Additional screenshots from that morning were brought by her. Val was still texting Voltage, talking about meeting up after the honeymoon. This girl's fucking audacity. The ceremony was weird, standing there in my tux, watching Val walk down the aisle with this fake, innocent look on her face. Her father looked proud as she sobbed. Poor guy. Spent $50,000 on this garbage show, and our entire family and circle of friends observing? As if it were a moment of beauty. Val's promises were an entirely new level of nonsense. All this nonsense about eternal love and loyalty, and how, until she met me, she had no real understanding of what love was. As I stand there, I'm thinking about the screenshots where she calls me safe and boring. Jessica was attempting to contain her laughter while seated in the front row. "We got through the ceremony." "I do," I said. For what was going to happen next, it had to be made legal. Took every picture. I went to the reception because I wanted to give my parents the best value for their money from the photographer. This is when stuff gets good. Everything was perfect. Val was in full bridal mode, showing off her ring, dancing with her parents, portraying the perfect wife. Speeches were then scheduled. Her dad went first, talking about what a great couple we were, how happy he was to welcome me to the family. Val's sister spoke passionately about real love. It was then my time. I stood up, picked up the microphone, and looked at Jessica. She gave me a slight nod. "I want to raise a glass," I murmured, watching Val grin at me from our love table. A picture is worth 1,000 words, you know. I decided to share some images that truly capture Val's personality rather than giving a lengthy speech. Kyle struck the lights. The screens became animated. First image, Val is grinding on volts in the DJ booth, hardly dressed. Second photo, their wording. Conversations about meeting up. Third image. Footage from the rave that shows them vanishing into the rear chamber. The room fell silent. Val's expression turned from surprise to fear in roughly 2 seconds flat. Her mom gasped so loud I thought she was going to pass out. There's more. Now that I was really into it, I went on. Let's hear what the bride genuinely feels about her new spouse. Kyle played Val's inebriated voicemail to Voltage, in which she claimed that she was only content with me because I was uninteresting and modest, but that he was her true passion. Val sprang to his feet and said, "Switch it off!" However, Kyle, who was a true legend, simply turned the volume up. What's wrong, babe? I asked into the mic. I thought you wanted an audience for your festival life. You told Voltage that, right? Now her father stood with a flaming face. Her mother was in tears. The majority of the attendees were either covering their mouths in shock or filming on their phones. Val ran up to me and sobbed, trying to hide the fact that it wasn't what it appeared to be. We can discuss this. That's when I revealed the last secret. And the part about getting together after the honeymoon? Yes, I also saw those texts. I will no longer be here to boring you, so don't worry. I passed the mic to the DJ. Our DJ, not Voltage, ha ha ha. Loosened my tie and marched straight over to Jessica. She stood up, the lovely little grin on her face, and I did what I'd been dying to do for weeks. In front of everyone, I grabbed her and gave her a kiss that was, let me tell you, electrifying. It was far superior to any kiss I had ever shared with Val. The whole room exploded, partly gasping, half cheering. Val was screaming something, but honestly, with Jessica in my arms, I couldn't hear anything else. We walked out together, hand in hand, leaving Val standing there in her $7,000 dress, with her ruined makeup and her ruined reputation. Later, I heard that she attempted to accuse me of lying, but Kyle had already connected the screens to the video system at the venue. Everything was recorded, including her outburst. As we left the reception area, with the sounds of mayhem echoing behind us, Jessica turned to face me. Do you want to provide them a genuine topic of conversation? Remember the hotel room she'd booked? Yes, we used it effectively. But first we had to pass through the lobby, which was unusual. Imagine this. My tux and I, bow tie undone, Jessica in her bridesmaid dress, both of us practically running to the elevator while wedding guests were still arriving for the reception. The glances we received were invaluable. The finest aspect? We ran into Voltage in the lobby. No joke. This clown actually showed up at the hotel, probably thinking he was going to be Val's little side piece after the reception. After seeing us, he recognized me from the pictures and went completely blank. Jessica, total queen that she is, just smirked at him and said, "Sorry, she's a bit busy having her wedding wrecked right now." My phone was exploding with hundreds of alerts when I entered the room. Val phoning and texting incessantly, her friends sending furious messages, my friends expressing congrats, strange wedding attendees who'd videotaped everything previously publishing it on social media. But to be honest, I don't give a damn. Not going to go into too much detail trying to keep this somewhat PG-13, but let's just say Jessica had been holding back some feelings for a long time. We eventually checked our phones at 4 a.m. goddamn. At the reception, Val had lost his mind. She made an effort to persuade everyone that I was lying and that the pictures weren't real after we left. All that BS. But then some genius, most likely, through the venue's speaker system, Kyle began playing the audio of her voicemails. Her mom was having a complete breakdown when she attempted to scale a table to unplug the speakers in her wedding gown, causing it to tear. Her dad was at the bar doing shots. To be honest, half of the visitors and my mood seemed to be recording everything or sharing real-time updates on the family group chat. The greatest part? The memes had already begun. The twins showed up. See, what Val didn't know was that Jessica had brought these two smoking, sexy twins. We were informed by the gym that they taught yoga, so we went to the hotel bar following the welcome. We hadn't even reached that part of the plan yet. These twins are posting stories from the hotel bar, tagging me, and obviously waiting for someone while Val is having her bridezilla moment at the reception. When Jessica sees this, she has a nasty, brilliant plan. She takes a pic of us in the hotel room, just like Clearly Together, if you understand what I mean, without being explicit, and post it with the caption, "Apologies, ladies, might be a touch late to the after party." Val lost her crap, started texting Jessica, calling her every name in the book. Jessica simply takes screenshots of everything and posts them again. The twins start posting thirst trap stories like waiting for the real party to start. The internet is eating this stuff up. The story went viral in our city's social circle by morning. Val's reputation in disarray Voltage's DJ career, presumably not helped by the fact that someone, possibly Kyle, had shared photos of him intentionally hooked up with an engaged woman. Around midday on the next day, we eventually left the room, and guess who's seated in the hotel lobby? While Val's friends were walking off shaming it through the lobby, looking like raccoons with their smudged makeup, the twins were looking brand new in their yoga gear. Being the whole chaos queen that she is, Jessica recommends brunch. Imagine this then. Me still in my wedding tux? Minus the jacket, Jessica in her bridesmaid dress, and two hot yoga twins having mimosas on the hotel patio while wedding guests are checking out the looks we got. Priceless. Val tried to show up at the hotel, but security had already been warned. Once more, Kyle is coming in clutch. They stopped her in the lobby. She was screaming that she needed to talk to me because she was the bride. Still in her ripped wedding dress. Mascara all over the place. We watched from the patio as they escorted her out. It was me who said, "Fuck it. We should all go back to my place." When someone has been betrayed, who needs to be reasonable? Even though the place was still officially half Val's, one said it anyway. I could tell by the look in Jessica's eye that the revenge tour was just getting started. So after our lunch at the hotel, we all headed back to my flat. Jessica, myself, and the twins, Ashley and Amy. I was still wearing my shirt, slacks, and suit. Jessica, dressed as a bridesmaid, appeared to have experienced war, which we kind of had the entire way back, to be honest. Updates from the aftermath of the wedding started flooding my phone. It seems that Val had returned to her parents' house and was having a complete breakdown on social media, writing lengthy tirades about how Jessica was a backstabbing viper and how I had wrecked her special day. The irony of her complaining about backstabbing while she'd been sneaking off with DJ Douchebag was just perfect. We arrived to my house. Well, because Val and I have been living together, it is still legally our place. And Jessica immediately starts making herself at home. The twins are snooping about the flat in that adorable manner only attractive women can get away with it. And I'm just sitting there thinking about how bizarre this whole thing is. That's when Jessica finds Val's secret drawer in the bedroom. God damn. You guys recall all the festival stuff she'd been wearing to meet up with Voltage? It wasn't just for raves, you know. There were, numerous glittery clothes. These platform boots that certainly weren't for work, plus a whole bunch of other items I won't discuss since I don't want this article getting reported. The twins thought this was hilarious and decided to play dress up. Next thing I know, they're all trying on Val's festival clothes, snapping selfies, having the fun of their lives. Jessica found this super expensive bodysuit that Val had bought for the honeymoon and decided it looked better on her anyway. We hear keys in the door at that point. Val rushes in like she owns the place. I mean, technically her name was still on the lease, but come on, presumably expected to find me alone and miserable. Instead, Jessica is wearing her honeymoon lingerie when she enters. Me on the couch, the twins dressed for a festival. Just living my best life. The noise she made. I had no idea that anyone could hit that pitch. What on earth is this? She yells. Crying all day left the mascara still smeared. Her hair is a mess, and she is still dressed from yesterday. Looking like she'd been up all night, which she probably had. Oh, we're just having a little fashion show, Jessica says, staring her in the eye. Your stuff is adorable. Not very bride-like, though, is it? Val lunges for Jessica, but Ashley, or maybe it was Amy, steps between them. Honey, she adds in a really kind tone. Before you create any more drama, you might want to repair your makeup. You guys, there are already enough of videos online showing you losing it. The scream that came out of Val. She begins gathering her belongings and packing them in bags while sobbing that she never imagined I would harm her. The irony, I swear. She then loses it when she sees the twins dressed in her rave attire. Those are mine, she shrieks, attempting to clutch at them. We think they look like club gear, so Amy or Ashley simply spins away and asks, Are they? Isn't that what you wore to hook up with that DJ? Val turns to me, switching to victim mode instantly. Please, baby. She bursts into tears. It was a single error. This is something we can resolve. I cherish you. Jessica reveals the truth at that point. One mistake. Shall we play the other club films from last month for him? Or maybe the ones from Vegas? Jessica had a lot more dirt than she had initially admitted. Val's expression quickly changed from fake tears to fear. You wouldn't, she murmurs. Give me a try, Jessica says, pulling out her phone. I retained everything. Every snapshot, every video, every inebriated confession about all your tiny exploits. Want to see them, babe? Val actually leaves half of her belongings behind when she flees the flat. The door smashes so violently, we spent the rest of the day looking through Val's belongings. Yeah, probably not legal. But after what she did, whatever found receipts for hotel rooms, more club outfits, and get this a diary. Let's just say voltage wasn't the only side item. Jessica officially moved in a week later. The twins started coming often. And Val, she attempted to hook up with Voltage once more, but he had already moved on to another girl, according to what I heard last. Don't you think karma is a bitch? It's been roughly 6 months since the wedding. To be honest, it wasn't the best non-marriage choice ever. It's been an incredible life. The apartment was completely renovated. All of Val's basic live laugh, love decor was removed, and the space was actually made to look respectable. Val. She's been on a complete downward spiral, man. She attempted to save face after the wedding fiasco by posting a lengthy tirade on Instagram about how I was controlling her and that she was escaping toxicity or something. Nobody bought it, especially after Kyle. Absolute Legend leaked more videos from the rave. She ended up having to turn off her comments because people continued posting DJ jokes. She attempted to reconnect with Voltage, but it seemed that he had moved on to someone else. Last I heard, she relocated to Miami to rediscover herself, aka probably find more DJs. Her dad still sends me Christmas cards though, which is hilarious. The twins are still in our lives. They come over for what we call Chaos Sundays, basically breakfast that evolves into all-day pool parties at their property. Val watches all our social media from phony profiles and just loses it every time we upload images. Sometimes we posture in ways that mimic her past thirst trap articles simply to screw with her work's been intriguing. Had to deal with some awkward conversations since Val and I were both kind of known in our industry. Jessica. She is doing well. Obtained a new position at a rival pharmaceutical business. Definitely couldn't continue working with Val and now earns more money. She also no longer has to pretend to enjoy Val's cheesy Starbucks postings. In relation to Val's former life, do you recall all of the wedding presents we received? Yes, we did keep them. Val's mother attempted to compel them to return them, but as they were addressed to both of us, half of them were actually mine. Gave Jessica's mother, who detested Val, the most of the expensive china, BTW, and used the remainder of the gift cards to equip our apartment. After Val departed, Zeus, the cat, finally quit being like a jerk. It turns out that he simply didn't like her enthusiasm. Now he's the most relaxed pet ever. Even lets the twins pet him when they come around. Animals? No, dude. And do you recall our planned honeymoon? Bali's 5-star resort? Her parents covered all of the costs. Yes, I went with Jessica. In fact, Val's father insisted. Said that because he was unable to receive a return, someone ought to enjoy it. The look on the hotel staff's faces when we explained why I was there with a different woman than the one on the reservation. The highlight of it all? In fact, I'm content, as in truly joyful. Principles. To constantly claim that I was predictable and uninteresting. But turns out, I just needed someone who appreciated me. Ironically, Jessica and I occasionally attend raves, but we also spend time playing video games at home. We can do fancy date nights or just crush a pizza and watch movies. It's just easy. Actually, I received a text from Val last week. She was inebriated, obviously, and going off about how she made a mistake and misses what we had. I just emailed back an image of me, Jessica, and the twins at a pool party with the caption "new phone." Who is it? Maybe that was petty, but after everything she put me through, worth it. So that concludes this bizarre tale. In Miami, Val is by himself, probably still trying to slip into DJs, DMs, voltages, or whatever aspiring DJs do. And me living my best life with a woman who actually appreciates me, surrounded by amazing friends. And at last, without the energy of that basic bitch. Last week, Val's cousin sent me a message in an attempt to guilt trip me by saying that I've changed and that I'm not the kind person she knew. Sent her back a picture of me with 5 girls in a pool. Told her she's right. That person perished at the altar. And honestly, good riddance. The new me is having considerably more fun. I would still be stuck in a marriage with someone who didn't prioritize me if Val hadn't cheated. Hey there, though, loss. I'm simply living life like a freaking rock star now. No attachments, no drama, no hassles. Life is good. Read it real good. Edit goddamn. This went viral. Again, rip my inbox, edit. Thanks for all the prizes, but stop contacting me DMs asking for the twins' socials FFS third edit. Yes, we're considering of making the Crazy Sundays a weekly podcast. Keep an eye out. Final edit. Videos of weddings were requested by several of you. For legal reasons, I'm still unable to share them, but believe me, they're being stored for something great. Maybe our 1 year, not a wedding anniversary celebration. Story 3. In this narrative, my brother was falsely accused of getting me expelled from university. But now that he's dead, my parents want to get back in touch. Hi, everyone. Before the video for today begins, I need your help. One of the greatest ways you can help us out is to subscribe, since we've observed the channel is losing some of its popularity. It's easy, cost-free, and enables us to keep giving you incredible content. Thank you so lot for your help. Together, let's continue to grow this channel. Many thanks. Now, let's start the video. Okay, so this whole affair started about 7 years ago, but I really need to get this off my chest in light of the present situation. That brings everything back to the surface. A little history. I'm now a male 26. Was 19 when this went down. Be prepared for some really bizarre family drama. My younger brother and I were the only ones growing up. Our family looked normal from the outside middle class, with a good suburban house, family meals and all that. However, the dynamics were messed up, guy. My brother was always the golden child. Like, to a point where it was genuinely ludicrous. I don't mean to seem arrogant, but I was a good student. 0 GPA developed this tutoring program for kids at the local community center. Was the captain of the debate team. Completed everything that was required of you. In contrast, my brother barely kept up a 3.4. He played video games and threw parties most of the time. However, he was viewed by my parents as a misunderstood genius who just learned differently or whatever. They would say, I can quickly illustrate how terrible it was when I got all A's in a single high school semester. That's expected of you, my mom answered with a simple nod. They honored my brother's success by taking him to his favorite restaurant the same week he got a B- in English. I hope this isn't true. Anyhow, let's move on to college applications. I submitted an application to Stanford. It has been my dream school since I was a kid. Had a decent SAT score of 1540, participated in extracurricular activities, and excelled academically. Spent months researching my ass. My brother decided he would also go there, mostly because our father came and talked a lot about continuing the custom or whatever. Everything began to go awry at this point. First, I received my letter of acceptance. I can clearly recall the day the email notification appeared on my phone while I was in the kitchen eating leftover pizza. When I read it, I actually began to shudder. I knew my parents wouldn't give a damn, so I immediately called my best friend. Oh, that's nice, was all they replied when I told them over dinner, and immediately started talking about my brother's application, stating that they were positive he would become involved. All right, I'm still annoyed about this. He earned an Atwell 90 on his SAT, scarcely studied, and submitted a silly essay about how hosting house parties offered him leadership experience or something. Actually, I made an effort to help him with his coursework, remained up late to aid him with practice examinations, and to clarify mathematical challenges. But he would always stop playing Call of Duty after 20 minutes or so, and say something along the lines of, not everyone needs to be a try-hard nerd like you. Then came the day he received his letter of rejection. Holy shot, you'd think someone had passed away. When he got home from checking the mail, he literally dropped himself on the kitchen floor in sobs. He wasn't 21. He was 12. As though he were suffering a heart attack, his parents hurried over. Meanwhile, my Stanford admission letter, takeaway menus, and my brother's old soccer team photo were still on the refrigerator. The ensuing weeks were unbearable. My brother stayed in his room most of the time, only coming out to sigh dramatically and give me sour looks. In addition, my parents started acting oddly, saying things like some people get all the luck, and life isn't fair to everyone. For example, I worked really hard for years while he coasted by on Charmin's ads. However, I was the fortunate one. The worst part was that my brother had been telling everyone, including his friends, extended family, and strangers at the grocery store that our dad had predestined him for Stanford. There was already a Stanford sticker on his car, embarrassing AF. Upon being rejected, he began circulating a story about how I must have committed an unethical act to gain entry, rather than admitting that perhaps he might have done better. He was first only telling people that I probably cheated on my SATs, or that I knew someone in admissions, but it got worse, much worse. And now that I think about it, I understand that this was merely the beginning of his insane strategy to cheat me. I didn't realize it at the time, but this rejection harmed my brother's brain. It seemed as though he couldn't believe that his destiny hadn't been realized. Instead of handling things normally, he made the decision that I couldn't go Stanford if he couldn't. So, starting up where I left off, I went to Stanford. The first few months were great, to be honest. I felt as like I could just be myself without my brother's shadow looming over me for the first time in my life. With my housemates, I was really lucky. In the latter case, I met Jake, a man from Portland who shared my passion in computer science and didn't think it was odd that I enjoyed my studies. Our dorm room at your high school was housed in this older edifice. It wasn't really elegant, but it was near the dining hall and had these enormous windows. Jake and I would set up our workstations facing each other and work on late-night coding sessions while fueled by Red Bull and those cheap Walmart cookies. We worked out the full system. We had a policy that required the door to be closed after 11 p.m., but it was usually open when we were there because study groups often visited, in order for us to genuinely sleep. Life was actually going rather nicely. I maintained a GPA of 3.9. Fucking linear algebra killed my 4.0, but whatever. Was working on an intriguing artificial intelligence project and had joined the robotics club. My professor hinted that I could be looking for a summer internship, and this Google recruiter had been sniffing about our department. Everything was coming together for once. Then the strange things began to occur. At first, it was small things. Like when I sat down at a seat in the dining hall, someone would go to another table and I would notice that they were speaking and staring at me. I thought maybe my BO was terrible, or something heh. However, he had never even spoken to this kid from my math class before. He comes up to me after class and asks if I can put him in touch. Hook you up with what? I asked. The homework solutions. He gave me this weird look and then just left. After the hall meeting, my raw Sarah pulled me aside approximately a week later. She admitted that there were some concerns about what I was doing, despite her best efforts to appear unconcerned. Before she questioned me directly whether I was selling Adderall to other students, I had no idea what she was talking about. I assumed she was kidding, so I actually laughed. I'm not a drug dealer, much less someone who takes Tylenol for headaches. The screen grab was then shown to me. On Instagram, someone posing as me had been DMing random Stanford students with offers to sell them study aids. The words were written in this peculiar way that kind of sounded like me. Used several of my exact phrases, yet they weren't mine at all. During fake chats, I even reportedly admitted to stealing my brother's study idea to get approval. I recognized my brother at once. He had been keeping up with me on social media. After he studied my writing and then staged these intricate, fictitious chats, I subsequently learned this from his ex. This guy had previously asked me whether Python was like snakes and all that, but it grew worse. So the research project suggestion was really rich. Much worse. Jake and I would often visit the 24-hour library to study. However, I experienced the worst migraine of my life on this particular night during midterm week. As if spots were about to throw up everything, Jake essentially told me to rest in bed and recover, stated that he would subsequently make his notes available to me. I pulled myself to my 8 a.m. meeting. The morning after, class because I am a fool for scheduling an 8 a.m. class, and campus police officers are waiting outside my door. It turned out that I was selling drugs out of my dorm room, according to an anonymous complaint. Under my bed, where I kept my extra textbooks, they discovered a shoebox filled with marijuana and unlabeled pills. This is the problem. My brother, Jake, and I were the only three people who were aware of that location. He would help me move in and complain that my dorm was much nicer than his dorm at the community college. He made it to the end. He made a joke about hiding presents from our mother there when she arrived, so I remember specifically telling him where I kept my spare books. I was stressed out trying to explain that the tablets weren't mine, but then three of my classmates came forward and admitted that they had bought me Adderall. I later found out that my brother had paid them with all of his funds from his work at the subway. Imagine being that petty, for example. To cheat on your brother, you spend the whole summer working at Sandwich, the portion that's truly broken. The day the police showed up, my parents had already decided to take a car to the university. When the cops showed up, I was attempting to explain everything to them, rather than asking questions, shielding me, or doing anything else a responsible parent would do. As he stood there texting someone, my dad had this odd little smirk on his face. Later, when I checked our phone bill, I saw that he had been messaging my brother the whole time. Looking back, I see how well thought out everything was. My brother was able to anticipate when I would be most vulnerable during the midterms, knew the position in my room, and had spent months making up this tale about a heroin dealer. He even orchestrated everything to make me appear ridiculous in front of our parents. Meetings with the dean, the disciplinary board, and campus police dominated the following several weeks. Jake tried to keep me safe. I told them that I was the most straight-edge person he knew and that I wouldn't even drink coffee because I felt weird about putting drugs in my body. My instructors have written letters on my character. Didn't matter. That was it. They had evidence and witnesses. Okay, so here's when everything really went wrong. A reasonable warning. Even after 7 years, the thought of this passage still makes my blood boil. The inquiry at the institution was a total farce. They discovered the drugs in my room, and I'm still positive my brother left them there. I had 3 unrelated children accuse me of selling them Adderall. My brother gave them each $500 from his Subway savings, after learning about it much later. There were then many screenshots of me messaging people about drugs on Instagram. I did everything I could to prove my innocence. I sincerely volunteered to immediately submit to a drug test. To prove I hadn't received any odd payments, I showed them my bank accounts. I was the straight-edge student who once reported someone for smoking cigarettes, and I even had my high school teachers write notes about it. You get the idea, but it's hardly my proudest moment. The disciplinary hearing happened on a Tuesday morning. I recall this because on Wednesday I was due to show this Google recruiter my eye project. Had been working on it for months. The hearing took place in this suffocating administrative building chamber. For some reason, I felt like I was being tried for murder. 6 individuals were sat at this long table, gazing at me as if I were El Chapo Jr. The presence of my parents somehow made everything worse. Mom continued to pretend to cry. No actual tears, only strange sniffling sounds. And Dad spent the whole time texting. My phone bill eventually proved that he was supplying my brother with real-time information. After all, who hurts their own child in that way? The toughest thing was calling the witnesses. These 3 individuals, whom I hardly knew from my dorm building, claimed that I had been selling them Adderall from the first week of classes. They had a whole tale about how I would meet them behind the library at specific times, and they even offered special discounts for large orders. All of this specific BS. That gave the impression that I was a professional drug dealer. I'm sitting there thinking about how I had to really Google what Adderall was when I had my RA blamed me at first. Jake tried to keep me safe. I was absolutely the most boring roommate ever, he assured them up there. I was so suspicious of artificial sweeteners during all-nighters that I refused to even consume energy drinks. We have an open-door policy, so anybody might enter our room, I told them. I went so far as to say that my flawless grades put me in the running for the Google internship. So why would I put myself at such risk to sell drugs? It didn't matter, though. They had already made up their minds and had their proof. The dean. This man read out a long speech on Stanford's zero-tolerance policy for drug distribution and the need to maintain the school's reputation, among other things. He had the most punchable face I've ever seen. The expulsion letter was about 3 pages long. However, I can only recollect the first line. Immediately. Stanford University has discontinued your enrollment. It's that easy. Everything I'd worked for my entire life was gone. I was given 48 hours to vacate my dorm room. Packing my things was strange. For example, one moment I'm this bright CSE student who may get an internship at Google. The next, I'm stuffing all my dreams into cardboard boxes, while others murmur in the corridor. Some jerk even recorded me moving boxes to my car on Snapchat. Very elegant. My parents showed there to help, but largely just stood about making everything worse. Mom used to say, I just don't know where we went wrong with you a lot. Dad continued to message my brother. At one point, he really grinned at his phone. Guess my brother texted something really humorous about my life being shattered. The last blow to the stomach. Due to unresolved disciplinary processes, the institution refused to deliver my transcripts. I was consequently not only ejected, but I was also unable to transfer to another site. Oh, and they still demanded that I cover the entire cost of tuition for the semester. Cool, cool, cool. Jake was the only real friend I had left. Until about 3 in the morning, he helped me pack. After that, we sat on my bed without clothes, munching chips from the vending machine, and attempting to figure out what on earth I was going to do next. His parents got in touch with me and offered to host me at their Portland home while I worked things out. They were these really laid-back doctors who could sense that something wasn't quite right. But the worst part? My grandparents. My parents called them right away to inform them of the expulsion because they had co-signed my school debts. They essentially thought I had changed into some sort of drug lord, instead of listening to my side of the story. I always worry that all that computer stuff would lead you down a bad path, my grandmother said candidly. For example, what is the link between drugs and coding? By Thursday evening, I was completely out of Stanford. I've been dreaming, learning, and doing everything right for 7 years. Everything was lost because my brother couldn't handle rejection. The amusing thing is, and by amusing, I mean absolutely outraged. At community college, he was doing all right. Perhaps he simply realized that was where he belonged and went on. However, not at all. I had to make sure I missed my opportunity as well. Writing about an uncle after being expelled from Stanford is extremely difficult. Basically, I had nothing. Lack of a degree, financial resources, housing, and a family who thought I was Walter White Jr. or something. Jake and his parents are a blessing. They let me crash in their basement in Portland as I sought to figure my life out. Their basement wasn't anything special, just this semi-finished place with those strange little windows near the top and a sofa that probably came from someone's college room. But honestly, considering all that occurred, it seemed like a 5-star hotel. Every morning, Jake's mother would put breakfast outside my door. Usually just cereal and coffee, but still, it meant a lot. And his dad helped me hunt for employment online. But getting a job was a nightmare. When you explain your Stanford expulsion to prospective employers, try not to come out as a complete jerk. Eventually, I got a job at Walmart, starting at 6 in the morning, up to 2:00 p.m. Shifts, earning $11.50 per hour to stock shelves, barely enough to cover my car's petrol. I purchased this used 2008 Civic on Craigslist for $2,000. One work wasn't enough. Even though I had saved up all of my money for my summer employment, I began working afternoon shifts and using DoorDash to deliver items before 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. At the penalty box, a dubious sports bar. The owner paid in cash and didn't ask questions about my background, which was nice, but the place was definitely a front for something illegal. For instance, why is having 3 safes in the back office of a sports bar necessary? My flat was basically simply a converted pantry in this decrepit house I shared with 4 other guys. And when I say pantry, I mean it literally used to contain canned items. Because it was so little, I was forced to decide between a desk that wouldn't fit or a twin mattress. Both went with the mattress and used my laptop while I was in bed. One of my housemates, Miguel, was certainly a true drug dealer. Isn't that ironic? Sometimes he would share his mom's homemade tamales with me when I couldn't afford groceries. In actuality, He was among the friendliest men there. It wasn't even the tiny space or the awful jobs that were the worst. I had the sensation that my entire future had disappeared. I'd scroll through LinkedIn and see my old Stanford classmates posting about their internships at Google and Facebook, while I was trying to figure out if I could afford both ramen and toilet paper that week. Jake would call to check on me. But after a while, I began ignoring his calls, since it was too painful to hear how well school was going. My parents also made a few attempts to contact, but they were only able to inform me of my disappointment and the fact that my brother was doing well in community college. Like, whoa. His falsehoods have made me feel like I'm living in a closet, but excellent for him for being able to pass basic English. They even had the guts to question whether I was clean, yet I blocked their numbers after that. Coding was the only thing that kept me sane. In between shifts, I would go to Dots, a 24-hour cafe with free Wi-Fi, get their cheapest coffee, $1.50, and work on intermittent programming jobs for hours. Linda, the overnight waitress, was an elderly woman who occasionally brought me extra fries or a piece of pie that was destined to be thrown out by accident. I assumed she was aware of my financial circumstances, even if she never acknowledged it. Dots become like my second home. It was quiet at night. No one bothered me because I could pretend that I was still a real ex-student instead of a college dropout with 3 unsatisfying jobs. I made this inventory management system for fun in order to stay current with my skills. Looking back, the endeavor truly ended up transforming my life. But I'll get to that in the following part. Some nights were really black, though. Like sitting in your car bawling after a 12-hour workday. Dark. When I worked for DoorDash, the first remember making a delivery to a house that exactly resembled my parents' house. The father who opened the door even resembled my father in several ways. I think I frightened them to death when I went completely crazy in their driveway. Rock bottom was probably about month 4 of this lifestyle. I fell ill, like terribly sick with some form of sickness, but couldn't afford to miss work. I ended up fainting while working at Walmart. I was really driven to urgent care by the manager himself. Dave deserves special recognition. You really were. According to the doctor, I was terribly dehydrated and had a temperature of 103 degrees. Since I needed the money for rent, I continued to work at my bar job at night. The ridiculous part is that my brother was having a great time during all of this. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that he would inform others that I was away receiving therapy or resolving certain issues. He even took over my old room at our parents' house and sold most of the things I had left behind. Apparently, purchased a PlayStation 5 with the funds. To keep myself from going crazy, I was building an inventory management system at Dot's Diner. Remember that? That ended up being my ticket out of the bottom. But allow me to step back. At around 1 in the morning, I'm seated at my typical booth. I'm on my third $1.50 cup of coffee when this dude in a suit enters. Unusual for Dots, indeed. Usually, it was just truckers and other sleep-deprived folks like myself at our flat. He sits down at the counter and starts talking to Linda, the wonderful waitress who kept giving me free food by accident. While I'm half coding, I hear him griping about how his real estate officer's software is completely worthless. They were suffering numerous reservations for viewings, misplaced listings, and other upheaval. In fact, Linda, who had witnessed me coding there for months, says, "You ought to speak with my friend over there. He's some kind of computer genius." I admit that I was not a computer whiz. Free Wi-Fi and insomnia for a Stanford dropout. However, Mark approaches and asks what I'm working on. I show him the system I created for fun for the inventory. Honestly, simply to keep track of what food was chucking out. My goal was to assist Linda in cutting back on waste. With much excitement, he asks me whether I could create a real estate equivalent. The next thing I know, I'm being hired as a freelancer by his company. They initially only paid $20 per hour, roughly twice as much as Walmart for system maintenance. In addition, I could work on it in between jobs. Mark started giving me new tasks to complete, including updating their website or creating a more effective monitoring system for real estate listings. After about 6 months, I had automated about half of their office processes. Mark offered me a full-time job as their IT specialist since they were saving so much time and money. The pay of $45,000 was not very outstanding, but It did come with a real desk and an actual office and health insurance. The pantry bedroom is gone. Things start to become intriguing at this point. I began to understand how everything operated after spending my entire day in the real estate industry. I'd overhear the agents talking about transactions, observe how they treated customers, all that stuff. One day, an agent phoned in unwell when she was scheduled to show a house. Mark was stressing up because it was some big shot customer. Since I was familiar with the property's specifics from the system I had built, I offered to take care of it. Total fake it till you make it moment. I watched about 5 YouTube videos about showing houses on the way there. However, it managed to work somehow. The clients actually liked that. I could teach them about the house's electrical system and show out probable upgrade choices. In the end, they bought the property. The following day, Mark called me into his office, and I thought I may lose my job for going too far. He offered to sponsor my real estate license instead, stated that my IT background had given me a unique perspective. I could communicate in their language with all of these Silicon Valley individuals who were migrating to Portland. The licensing study was challenging. I was still working full-time and going to school at night, as opposed to living in a pantry and doing 3 jobs. Piece of cake. Got my license in 4 months. Started out as a less seasoned agent. I thought I was hot shit after making precisely 2 sales in my first month. But suddenly things clicked. I started to recognize that I could mix my knowledge in technology and real estate in a manner that no one else was. I built a website that monitored market patterns and could estimate which locations were primed to thrive based on things like new tech company headquarters and coffee shop openings. Began with the goal of helping its workers relocate to Portland. In my first year as a full agent, I made $82,000. Nothing spectacular, but not awful. $145,000 in the second year. Year 3, $285,000. Turns out all those hours sobbing in my car while doing DoorDash really taught me something about hustling. The real win for me was landing this huge customer who was helping a big company move their whole engineering team from San Francisco to Portland. We're talking about more than 50 expensive homes. Commission on that sale alone was more than 4 years of my former pay combined. I am currently the youngest senior manager in the history of the organization. Sales during the past quarter alone were $1.8 million. I acquired my own home in this gorgeous region, where all of my neighbors are attorneys and physicians. Even got a faux German Shepherd. I am still a massive nerd, yeah. When I say pseudo speak the crazy part, you should hear him growl. With a Stanford CSS degree, I probably wouldn't have made as much money as I do now. I periodically see my former classmates stuck in code jobs when I check LinkedIn. Even though I work 30-hour weeks and make a fortune, they hate me. Oh, and remember Linda from Dots? I occasionally still go there for coffee, but now I leave $100. Last year, tips helped pay the cost of her daughter's wedding gown. She still makes an effort to give me freebies, though, huh? This is where the tale picks up in the present. To be honest, I'm still getting acclimated to everything. I was playing Sudo and grilling some steaks in my backyard last Sunday. It remains the best dog ever. Even if my girlfriend says teaching him how to respond to Linux commands is excessive geek behavior. This Portland afternoon is wonderful. Not too hot, but sunny. I'm listening to music, just lounging with my dog. Then, in front of the house, Sudo starts barking frantically. Now, he usually gets along well with neighbors and delivery personnel. I knew then that something was wrong. When I check, I see that this black Mercedes is parked in my driveway. For a moment, I think it might be a client. The door is open, but I get a lot of tech-specific types these days. It's my parents, yes. I haven't seen them for 7 years. Right? It looks like mom is in her 20s. Additionally, dad looks like a bargain store because of his odd beard attempt. Walter White. Like they've seen a ghost, they're just standing there and looking at me. What my mother said first. Your house is bigger than we expected. No. Hello? No. We missed you. I'm not even sorry for ruining your life by falling for your brother's crap. Not at all. Only insults to my house that are passive-aggressive. Classic mom. But after that, I really paid attention to how they looked. They appear to be broken. Mom's wearing no makeup, which never happens. Dad's hands are shaking as well. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. They informed me that my brother hit a tree with his automobile. 3 weeks ago, I left a club in Vegas. Died when struck. He had apparently been employed as a social media consultant, which suggests that he was one of those guys who promote clubs and are paid to bring attractive women to events. To be honest, his personality suits. Things start to get really messed up at this point. They were there for more than just telling me my brother's story. They came to apologize. It turns out that my mom ran into my old roommate Jake, a code guru at Google Now, at a tech conference in Seattle last month. He essentially told them everything, even though he was unaware that my brother had passed away. Showed them every piece of evidence he had previously kept. Screenshots of my brother's fake Instagram accounts, documents detailing the money. He paid those children to lie, and even security camera footage from our hostel showing a man who looked quite similar to my brother visiting our room the day before the drugs were found. My parents claim that Jake has been collecting these things for years, in the hopes that they will eventually help clear my name. And honestly, I'm still not sure I believe this. My brother persuaded them that I was a crafty genius who had stolen his research project to get into Stanford. Remember how he almost failed science in high school? Indeed. He apparently told them that he had been working on some groundbreaking AI research in secret, and that I had somehow broken into and taken his computer. They claimed not to have known about the drug deal, claimed that because my brother provided them with proof, they genuinely believed I was dealing. Probably the same fake screenshots that he distributed around campus. Mom broke down in tears, saying that they had been thinking that they had let his parents down by letting their son trade drugs for years, only to discover that their other son was the real monster. They're telling me this while this pseudo sits there and gives them the most critical dog look ever, as though he knew I had been tricked by these people. Well done, youngster. I was unclear about how to feel. There was a part of me that wanted to shout at them for their ignorance, as though I had been raised by them for 18 years. Did they truly believe they were heterosexual? Not even Red Bull was ever eaten by them. Sun suddenly changed like Pablo Escobar. But I also felt empty in another sense. Despite everything, they continued to express their delight in my successes. Actually, Dad tried to take credit by saying that I was strengthened by the adversity they put me through. I absolutely laughed in his face, told him that's like shoving someone off a cliff and then applauding them for learning to fly on the way down. They then began talking about how they wanted to be engaged in my life once more, as they had lost one kid and didn't want to lose another. Meet my girlfriend, maybe even be grandparents someday. When Mom saw a picture of me and my girlfriend on the wall, she broke down in tears because she thought she was such a lovely girl. By the way, she's a pediatric surgeon. Way out of my league. I just couldn't. Instructed them to depart. As they tried to argue, Pseudo started growling. Seriously, best dog ever. And as they were heading out, they finally got the hint. Mom said, "We really didn't know about the drugs," and she turned back. We just trusted him as he was our son, too. And that's what's really messing with my brain now. As if they were also simply the objects of my brother's manipulation. However, I then recollect how they have treated me throughout my life. Long before the incident at Stanford. How my efforts were never good enough. How they were always on his side, found after the fact. Jake gave them my address. At that conference, he ran into them, and they were so devastated over my brother that he felt horrible for them. Can't really blame him. Jake's parents are good. Most certainly couldn't understand parents truly aiming to wreck their child's life. So Reddit, do I need to forgive them? Update, about 2 weeks ago, my parents brought the news of my brother to my door. In all honesty, things have gotten a lot harder. They came back yesterday, simply showed up again unannounced while I was on a work call. Ring cameras have my gratitude. This time, they brought a whole box of evidence, including old photos and my brother's journal entries. Things they thought would help the situation in some way. Like showing me pictures of family vacations from 15 years ago, would erase the fact that they helped destroy my life. I didn't even walk downstairs to let them in. Pseudo growled his head off as he watched them on the Ring camera. When they refused to go, I finally phoned the police. Watching my dad try to explain to 2 police officers why they were just wanting to reunite with their kid was both heartbreaking and humorous. I actually asked one of the officers if I wanted to file a harassment complaint, but I just wanted them to leave. Here's the thing that's really been playing with my brain. After they left, I contacted Jake to essentially rage at him for giving them my location, but he told me something that made me stop mid-tirade when he first bumped into my parents at that tech conference. They honestly didn't know I wasn't a drug dealer. Like they were still telling people their kid was lost to addiction, or whatever Jake claimed when he showed them all the proof he'd preserved regarding my brother's setup. They appeared broken, as though everything in their universe was collapsing. After discovering evidence that my brother had paid those kids to fabricate claims that they had purchased narcotics from me, my mother apparently puked in a conference center restroom. But here's my problem. Even if they were genuinely ignorant of the drug arrangement, of which I'm still not entirely convinced, they never trusted me to always be there for my brother. 3 people haven't attempted to contact me in 7 years because their cherished child passed away. My therapist. Yeah, I got one. It turns out that there are problems when your entire family betrays you. Says, I need to separate 2 things. For supplying them, for accepting the drug charges, and for being indifferent parents in general. She might be right. All the times they selected my brother over me have been on my thoughts. Long before Stanford, he ruined my 6th grade science fair project, and they stated, I shouldn't have provoked his envy by using my college earnings to support his 3rd business attempt. My brother had a hangover and required them every time they celebrated his C-plus grades while ignoring my straight. So they skipped my high school graduation, which was a drop shipping scam. The more I think about it, the more I believe the Stanford experience wasn't the foundation of our troubles. It was merely the last sign of their poisonous partiality. I called my grandparents yesterday. First time in years they apologized for believing the drug crap, saying they should have known better. They did, however, drop another bomb. It turns out that for years, my brother had been lying to our entire extended family, accusing me of threatening him and attempting to ruin his life. He even provided them with fictitious texts as evidence. Guy's manipulation was a long-term strategy. My girlfriend feels I should at least hear my parents out. Says everyone deserves a second chance. But it was easy for her to say. Her parents genuinely love her and paid for her medical school education. Jake concurs with her. However, Jake's parents aren't insane, so he also believes in humanity and crap. But you know what, for me, was the difference? I discovered that it was only after they discovered my brother's journal that they began searching for me. He wrote this whole confession about everything he did to me. Most likely when he was intoxicated, feeling bad, or whatever. They either didn't search for me because they missed me or because they learned the truth on their own. They only came looking because their golden child, who had passed away, told them to. So I've made my decision. I'm filing for a restraining order tomorrow. I already talked to a lawyer about it. 7 years of no communication, then regularly showing up at my house without warning, should be enough for at least a temporary order. I'm aware that some people may perceive me as being unforgiving. But here's the thing. I've been creating a life without them for the past 7 years. Got an amazing career, fantastic girlfriend, best dog ever. While I'm typing this, Pseudo just brought me his ball. Haha. Solid pals. Why would I want to throw poisonous individuals back into that mix simply because they suddenly understand they backed the wrong son? Indeed, it's possible that they were unaware of the drugs. They may have been duped by my brother as well, but they were bad parents before that. And just because their favorite child lied doesn't mean that they are now excellent parents. The last update. Well, this seems like a nice spot to finish this adventure. I appreciate all of your help, Reddit. I found that writing everything out really helped me digest a lot of things. Special shout out to Linda at Dot's Diner for all those expired pies. Miguel with his fantastic food truck. Still the greatest tacos in Portland. Thank you to Jake for being the greatest buddy anybody could have. My partner for taking care of my Linux command train puppy and my trauma. My therapist will receive her entire yearly salary from tomorrow's session alone. And also the goodest boy who knows evil parents when he smells them. Edit. This totally exploded up my email. Holy shoate. For those who are curious, yes, I'm actually doing fantastic today, making more money than I ever would have with that Stanford degree. I am at last free from family drama and living my best life. Edit to stop texting me. I'm requesting real estate guidance, haha. But if you're a tech worker going to Portland, my DMs are open. Third edit. Indeed, bogus instructions are effective. Current list includes sudo sit, sudo stay, sudo kill, growl, sudo fetch, and sudo update rolls over. I regret nothing. Story 4. My cousin unjustly accused me of abuse is the title of this narrative. After I was expelled, my parents took away my education funds and handed them to her. However, now that the truth is out, they wish to make amends. Hello, everyone. Prior to the start of today's video, I need your assistance. One of the greatest ways you can help us out is to subscribe, since we've observed the channel is losing some of its popularity. It's simple, free, and helps us continue to provide you with amazing content. Your assistance is much appreciated. Together, let's continue to build this channel. Many thanks. Let's begin the video now. All right, Reddit. I really need to let go of this narrative since I've been holding on to it for far too long. A fair caution. This is going to be a lengthy one, and to be honest, it still feels strange to type this, but whatever, I suppose. For background, I'm a 24-year-old man who had what most people would consider a respectable life until around 2 years ago. It's comfy, but nothing really noteworthy. My parents had a modest company that functioned as a local supply chain. I do not wish to be overly specific. Even though we weren't wealthy or anything, they made enough money for me to never worry about little things like some of my friends did. Before I get started, I should quickly clarify that although this is my primary account, I use fictitious identities for clear reasons. I don't want to experience any more turmoil than I have already. I intentionally grew up being evasive in this Midwestern medium-sized metropolis. Apologies. Everyone knew each other in the normal suburban community where we resided. Following my parents, let's call them Dan and Amy, I used to play video games with my pals in our simple 4-bedroom home with a respectable backyard. To be honest, we're quite cool. Despite their hard labor, they always found time for their family. Things like Amy somehow managed to attend all of my school functions while managing their business, and Dan would assist me with my math assignments while working 12-hour days. In retrospect, I realized how much I had taken for granted that steadiness. However, my cousin will be the subject of this narrative. I'll refer to her as Emma. Her father, my Uncle Jake, passed away in a vehicle accident when we were around 8 years old, so we essentially grew up together. She is my age, having been born 3 months apart. Kate, her mother. After Jake's death, she sort of disappeared, began discovering who she was, or whatever, which essentially meant leaving Emmy with us while she and her yoga pals explored Europe. Man, this whole situation becomes even more chaotic when one considers how many there used to be. We were practically siblings. Almost every day after school, she would come over and we would play Pokemon on our DS and complete our schoolwork together. Yes, I was extremely cool back then, and I'm dating myself here, just hanging out. When I sneaked out to see friends, she would act as my cover, and I would assist her in handling the drama. When Kate would emerge out of the blue, pretend to be a mother for a week, and then vanish once again. M's parents essentially took on the role of second parents. They had her a room at our house, bought her school supplies, took her on our family trips, even got her braces when Kate neglected to send money for M. Despite the additional costs, Dan and Amy never voiced any complaints. They just cared for her as if she were their own child. In middle school, I recall this one instance. M was scheduled to appear in this major school production. She played a key role, and weeks were spent practicing. Surprise, surprise, Kate never showed up for the flight she said she would take to see it. Backstage, M was fighting the need to cry, but I could see she was going to lose. My mom basically left everything she had at work, hurried to the school, and sat in the front row, using her iPad to capture the entire event. That's the sort of thing that drives me insane about this whole issue. As if we were true family, not just friends you visit at Christmas, but true relatives. M was aware of all my humiliating tales. I was aware of all her secrets. All the other people were annoyed by our inside jokes. I wasn't a great child or anything, but I did work summer jobs at this local game store because I wanted to play a lot of video games, even though my parents had enough money for college and other things. If you ask my mother, there were probably too many. I did okay in school, but I didn't have any kind of stellar grades. Really, just a regular man. M, on the other hand, was constantly at the top of our class and was actually quite intelligent back then. It's kind of clever. She had the ability to simply recall anything she read. Her teachers adored her. Everyone assumed she would wind up doing something divine at some prestigious university. Writing all of this down is strange. It's been ages since I gave the happy times any thought. To be honest, I've been attempting to forget everything. H. It's funny how things change. Around the junior year of high school, everything began to change. Since her mom, Kate, was away doing whatever with husband number 3 or perhaps number 4, M was still living with us the majority of the time. At this point, I honestly lost track, haha. However, something had changed. My initial observation was that M had become somewhat strange when it came to social networking. Like, truly strange. To upload one selfie, she would spend hours taking hundreds, and then she would compulsively monitor how many likes she received in comparison to other females at school. She once sobbed because a random influencer's post had more interaction than hers. I recall. She yelled at me. I don't understand when I attempted to explain that it wasn't a huge problem. After that, she began to socialize with these new girls. You are aware of the kind. Those whose parents had expensive automobiles and who were constantly boasting about their luxury possessions. M began returning home and complaining about how humble our home was. It was the same house where she essentially grew up, by the way, and how humiliating it was that my mother continued to buy at Target. The most bizarre aspect was that M began to fabricate these wild tales about her mother. For example, pretending that Kate was a successful entrepreneur who traveled the world and made deals while, in fact, she was only bouncing between yoga retreats and spending the remaining funds from Uncle Jake's life insurance. Although it was embarrassing to watch her lie to everyone, my parents never chastised her since they didn't want to make her feel bad. The financial situation became quite serious, and I would take my mother's clothing and accessories and never give them back. Began requesting pricey gifts for her birthday and Christmas, followed by these outbursts, should she not receive precisely what she desired. When my parents gave her the standard iPhone rather than the Pro Max model, she once actually stopped talking to them about it. Who does that like? However, her involvement in this strange eye painting stuff was what really started to frighten me. It appeared to be rather benign at first. She was editing her images using these programs to make them more visually appealing or whatever. She became fixated with these deepfake films, though, and I would spend hours in her room playing with them. I recall hearing her chuckle as I passed her room one evening when she was chatting on Discord with her new pals. They were making jokes about how they could truly wreck someone's life with this technology. At the time, I didn't give it much thought. God, I wish I had assumed it was simply normal, edgy, adolescent fare. The fact that she began exploiting people's images without their consent is the most problematic aspect. She would, for example, use these eye tools to do strange adjustments on photos she took during our family gatherings or parties. To be honest, some of them were really unsettling. When my mom saw some on her laptop, she tried to discuss it with her, but she just responded that we didn't have the same understanding of digital culture and that she was just working on her art. She also had the strange habit of constantly posing in family pictures such that she appeared to be the primary figure, who would lose her cool if she wasn't in the center. She would then share these heavily altered photos, with everyone else cut or blurred out. But she had the ideal appearance. When my dad asked whether the rest of us were only non-player characters in her game, he attempted to make a joke out of it. It was 3 days before she spoke to him again. The eerie thing! I saw her stealing pictures of me while I wasn't looking, like when I was playing games or doing my schoolwork. I questioned her about it. She would always be prepared with an excuse. Oh, I'm working on a school assignment or a family photo album. However, no record ever came out, and she never showed me these efforts. I attempted to discuss with my parents how strange she was becoming, but they dismissed it as typical adolescent female behavior and suggested that she was most likely simply having difficulties as a result of her mother's absence. They felt awful about her dad's death and her mom's lack of value, so they kept creating excuses for her. When the senior year arrived, things truly took a turn for the worst. I must admit that I was rather enthusiastic when everyone was discussing their intentions for college. Since I was born, my parents had been accumulating money for my education fund. Not a huge trust fund or anything, but enough to allow me to attend a good school without being indebted. In order to help me understand how saving worked, they were always very open and honest with me, giving me the account statements and everything. This is where I made a mistake. Em and I were playing Smash Bros. Together one evening in our game area in the basement. As we did when we were children, when she inquired about my intentions for college, I didn't hesitate to answer her because she appeared more relaxed than she has been in months. My parents had saved around $80,000 for college, I informed her. Knowing what happened to the number makes me shudder every time I type it out. M became very silent, which ought to have been my first clue. She then began to inquire about the narrative in great detail. Where did it take place? Was my name involved? When will I be able to access it? Such things. Her next statement was so strange that I can still clearly recall it. It must be pleasant to have parents who genuinely think for your future rather than squandering all of your dad's life insurance funds on Bali yoga getaways. I made an effort to be understanding, suggested that she apply for financial aid or scholarships, and even offered to help her find part-time work so she could begin saving money. She just looked at me. She seemed to be staring through me rather than at me, and I'm not sure how to explain it. After that, she began to complain about how unfair everything was and how her mother had promised to help with college, but had instead used the entire amount for her new husband's company. Warning: all of them were frauds. Despite treating her like family, my parents never considered setting aside money for her college education. How I just received okay marks and wasn't particularly intelligent, thus I didn't deserve the money, because I was supporting my poor orphan relative, and my instructors felt terrible for me. Not mine, but hers. At that time, I became rather irate. Considering that my parents had essentially raised her for free, I informed her that she was being ungrateful. A huge error. A huge error. I assumed she simply needed some time to calm down after she stormed out of the basement. I resumed my game and emailed Sarah, my girlfriend, about getting together later. Sarah was meant to play a significant role in my future. We were intending to attend the same college and had been dating since our sophomore year. Emma always joined us for breakfast, so it seemed strange that she wasn't there the next morning. Mom claimed to have departed early in order to finish a school assignment. In retrospect, she was most likely already putting her plan into action. The entire school day seemed strange. When I passed by, people were muttering and giving me strange glances. I texted Sarah, but she didn't respond. I reasoned that perhaps some stupid rumor was circulating. High school is like that, you know. But compared to other high school dramas, this was far worse. I had no idea what was waiting for me when I arrived home that day. A brief message. This section is rather difficult to write. A few pauses were necessary. This stuff still hurts hard even after 2 years. Everyone was in our living room as I entered. I hadn't seen my parents, Emmy and her mother, Kate, for around 8 months. However, even Sarah's parents were sobbing on the couch while Kate held her, which was somewhat remarkable given that Kate hadn't cared about her in years. The place fell quiet as soon as I entered. You know how it feels to enter a room and realize that everyone is talking about you? Yes. Take it and multiply it by 1,000. I recall asking, "What's happening?" Like some jerk in a scary film. M began to sob more intensely. In retrospect, her acting abilities were rather remarkable. And go. My mother refused to give me a glance. With his head in his hands, my dad simply sat there. Kate then took out her iPad. She prepared the entire presentation. I'm shocked that you haven't shown everyone these Discord servers where AI-generated photographs were being traded, which I had allegedly been a part of. She had screenshots of discussions regarding utilizing EMS photographs that appeared to be from my accounts. She also had fictitious bank statements that purportedly showed transactions from my cryptocurrency wallets. The worst thing? This item seems authentic, like frightful, actual. M was an expert at making things appear authentic since she had spent months studying how to utilize these AI tools. She also inserted minor details like inside jokes we used to share. Making the false talks seemed just like how I truly type. What did you do? Dad inquired. Em had considered everything she said, even though I attempted to clarify that none of it was true and that I didn't even know how to use the most of this computer stuff. My cover was that. So, in order to avoid suspicion, I feigned a lack of its skills. She even turned my interest of gaming against me by claiming that I got all of this knowledge from dark web gaming communities. Sarah was also present, had been with Em, who was finally talking about her trauma, and hadn't responded to my texts all day. Sarah was unable to look at me, just continued to clutch Em's hand while scowling at me as if I were a monster. The fact that Sarah trusted him was not the only thing that hurt. It was her eagerness to discard me. There was no hesitancy. There was no question. It happened instantly. She didn't request evidence, didn't consider how ridiculous the scenario was, didn't even think about the possibility that the man she had been seeing for years wasn't some hidden monster. She pretended to want to think the worst of me, as if rewriting our past was a simpler task than confronting the prospect that she was being duped. What's the worst? She didn't only accept it. She assisted Em. She made sure our pals heard the lies by amplifying them, made all of our connections work against me. In her view, I was more than simply guilty. She had to get rid of me entirely. And what's truly broken, do you know? Em used our entire past against me. All of the family vacations, the years we spent growing up together, and the time we spent in each other's rooms. She turned it all into something evil, gave the impression that I had been preparing something for years. Despite my repeated attempts to justify myself, everything I said only made the situation worse. I brought up how Em was the one that was always sneaking me pictures. She began to sob more and said that I was attempting to Davo her. Later, I had to look that up on Google. It seems to imply denying the attack and reversing the victim-offender relationship. At last, my father gave me a chilly look. For what duration has this been occurring? I went crazy. Are you serious? Are you really thinking this? It's insane of you all to believe this garbage. Em is telling lies. She simply feels envious of college. My college fund is what she wants. A poor decision. A really poor move. Em sighed loudly and shook her head as if she felt sorry for me. I anticipated his statement. I told you guys that he would bring up college to divert attention from his actions for precisely that reason. Kate lost it. Well, that's a long time ago. Do you believe that this is merely sibling drama? You are aware that they have the authority to file charges for this? I had stopped even listening. My mother sat there in silence, tears streaming down her cheeks. She refused to give me a glance. Desperate, I resorted to her. You know me, Mom, please. You are familiar with me. Before she could respond, Em's entire body trembled as she gasped, Please keep him away from me. Clinging to her chest as if she were having trouble breathing, she staggered back. Then she simply fell to the ground, hyperventilating and gasping violently. To be honest, the performance was Oscar-worthy. That was my dad's end of it. Grabbing me by the shoulders, he pushed me in the direction of the door. Thunderous voice. Leave. I went cold. You're not my son, Dad. He spit. I'll box up your belongings and send them out. However, you are no longer welcome in our house. It was over in an instant. I made one final attempt to expose Em's deceit. Do you want to know what my mother said to me at last? I regret having you in my life. I just had my wallet, phone, and bag when I left that residence. Lacked even a jacket. The Midwest was experiencing a fucking march. My number was banned by Sarah. In addition, I stayed in my car in a Walmart parking lot that night. I think the longest night of my life was the first night I spent in my automobile. I was wearing only my light hoodie, and the temperature was around 30°F. I kept attempting to text individuals, but I was blocked by everyone. Em had done a good job. She had even contacted my buddies who play video games online. Before I logged out, my Discord was exploding with people calling me a creep. Screenshots of Em's posts about me were being sent by the few people who hadn't blocked me yet. By blogging about how she was at last able to tell her truth and how she hoped other victims of AI abuse would feel empowered to come forward, she was playing the victim to perfection. In our school, she even established a hashtag regarding AI safety that was gaining popularity. I attempted to report to work at GameStop the next morning. Yes, my previous part-time work was still with me. After giving me a quick glance, my boss informed me that they had heard about the incident and that they couldn't have someone like me working with young clients. Was immediately dismissed. The amount in my bank account has dropped to about $167. All of my money were in that college fund, which I had not yet been able to touch. A credit card? Yes. My parents had already reported it over the phone. Decrease. Thus, it was called off. They truly considered every possibility. My car, the public library for warmth and Wi-Fi, and this 24-hour McDonald's where a one-night shift worker would let me hang out if I purchased a coffee every few hours were where I spent the following several days. Marcus deserves special recognition. You saved my life those nights, dude, if you're reading this. My phone rang just as I was about to consider some very dark stuff because I was feeling desperate. It was my mom's sister, my Aunt Paula, who lived in this small, remote village some 4 hours away. The only one who cared to inquire about my side of the story was her. I told her everything as I was sitting in the McDonald's parking lot. M's jealousy, the eye pictures, and how she set me up were all part of it. And, what do you know, she did pay attention. As in, actually paid attention. She wasn't only waiting for me to complete before expressing her disappointment. She remained silent for a minute after I had done speaking. Then she said something that will always stick in my memory. I think you're real. I completely lost it, broke down in tears in the parking lot. Until then, I hadn't sobbed during the entire ordeal, but I was just broken by those 3 words. Paula instructed me to wait, and she will come fetch me. Said that she had to first perform a shift at the hospital. She would drive down immediately after working as a nurse. I requested an extension of 12 hours. 12 of the longest hours of my life. I was afraid that she would somehow find out and be prevented from attending. I was always thinking that I was being watched by everyone. These advertisements concerning AI technology started popping up on the McDonald's Wi-Fi, which greatly confused me. Paula's ancient Subaru finally rolled into the parking lot at around 2 in the morning. She gave me a quick glance, wore the same clothing and hadn't taken a shower in days. Most likely just gave me a hug while looking like complete trash. Didn't pose inquiries. Didn't pass judgment, simply gave me a hug. For the journey back, she had given me a pillow, some food, and a warm sweater. She got me some cash when we stopped at an ATM. Later on, she discovered that she needed to use her personal funds for that. The entire journey back. She played music from the 1990s as she let me sleep, very silently. Do you recall that I mentioned M's proficiency with social media? By the time we arrived at Paula's house, she had somehow discovered that I was leaving town and had blogged the entire incident. Sarah even said on social media that she was relieved the truth was revealed before it was too late because of my guilt. My phone was just taken by Paula, who then locked it in a drawer. Stated that I should concentrate on living for the time being. Social networking could wait. She gave me a room in her spare. It seemed like a palace despite having only a desk and a twin bed. After spending the night in my vehicle, do you know what the truly problematic aspect is? M has already visited Paula's home when on family vacations. I believe her vengeance dream did not include the tedious bit where her victim had to really survive afterward, but she understood exactly where I was heading. It was difficult during those initial months at Paula's. Really harsh-like. I essentially turned into a recluse. I spent most of my days in that spare room just looking at the ceiling, trying to understand how my life had fallen apart so quickly. Even though Paula would bring me food, I hardly ever ate. In the first month alone, I lost almost 20 pounds. The nightmares were the worst. Remember, I was raised on social media, right? I was always online, just like everyone else my age. However, I would now experience a panic attack if I saw a phone camera. I kept thinking that M was watching and that everyone was filming me. I was certain that M could somehow get into Paula's laptop camera, so she had to cover it with tape. Throughout it all, Paula was a true angel. She made sure to check on me during the day even though she worked night shifts at the hospital. Began taking these sporadic novels home from the library. In retrospect, I believe she was attempting to demonstrate to me that I still had hope for the future. Paula sat me down for a serious conversation after about 2 months. Said that although I could be with her for as long as I needed to start living my life. She couldn't stay hidden in her spare room indefinitely. She was correct. However, the thought of having to face the world once more was horrifying, man. She brought this flyer for the nearby community college home the following day. It included computer science and night sessions. Isn't that ironic? I might be able to reconstruct my life with the same technology that M used to ruin it. Paula volunteered to cover the cost of tuition. Discovered later. For this, she obtained a little loan. Do you still feel bad about that? This is when things start to become a little dull, but in a nice way. I enrolled in these rudimentary courses. As it happened, I was really good at it. My past was unknown to the teachers. Didn't regard me as a monster of any sort. Being treated like a regular person once more was pleasant. I also got a job at this neighborhood computer repair company. Mike, the proprietor, was an elderly man who didn't care about drama or social media. All that mattered to him was whether or not you could fix computers. It wasn't much money, but it was something. In addition, I was gaining practical skills. I began establishing a regimen for myself. Throughout the day, work at the shop. Night classes. When Paula worked night shifts, she would put meals in the microwave for me. We would occasionally meet up for brunch. I just got home from courses that started late. She was just rising for work. I would study as she worked on her crossword while we had coffee. The frequency of panic attacks decreased. Began going to the grocery shop without giving it any thought. I had everyone's attention. Even got to know some people at school. Not pals, that's right. More like individuals with whom I might collaborate on projects without being anxious. Later on, I discovered that M was still sometimes writing about me. She had created an entire story about how I had gotten away with my crimes and was most likely still doing them somewhere. But what do you know? People were paying less attention to her posts. They were switching to fresh drama. Later, I discovered that M was still sometimes blogging about me. She had created an entire story about how I had gotten away with my crimes and was most likely still doing them somewhere. But what do you know? People were paying less attention to her posts. They were switching to fresh drama. I allowed myself look for the first time in months, so I knew. Not right away. Absolutely not. Through a public Twitter discussion featuring an old classmate who was being ridiculed for being a clout chaser, I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction she deserved. One of her dramatic survivor postings was linked, and the comments were harsh. Hold on. Wasn't this previously disproved? Someone made a remark. Girl, just say that if you need money, remarked another. Then I came to the one that truly chilled me to the bone. Didn't her family give her a lot of money for college, according to a random account? What became of that? I made a click. A screenshot of M's previous post from just after everything went down was the biggest error hidden among the answers. She was finally receiving the help she was due, according to a lengthy, meandering caption. Someone else sent a comment along with a photo of her admission letter to some posh out-of-state university. Her relative was expected to attend college, right? How did his fun fare? My stomach dropped as I sat there, gazing at the words, knowing exactly what had transpired. I simply didn't want to acknowledge it to myself. My father had said, "You are not my son," the day I was expelled. And I suppose he meant it since they handed her my college fund rather than conserving it for me, or even simply leaving it in the account. The whole $80,000. She snatched my future and burned it all down. For what purpose? Clout? High-end purses. A phony influencer job. Paula must have noticed my expression since she removed my phone from me with gentleness, but I'm not sure how long I sat there, she said. You don't have to do this to yourself. However, it was too late. The harm was already done. Paula assisted me in setting up a new phone number, email, and everything else. To start over, not to conceal. This one burner email address was the only thing that connected me to my former life. I occasionally checked in case somebody from my past was interested in hearing my version of events. Nobody ever did. The strange thing is that I began to feel somewhat better. Not quite content, but stable, began to understand how I truly operate in my classes. More about digital forensics, including how to identify phony photos. Even though it was too late to support my argument, it felt nice to comprehend everything. I remember sitting with Paula and watching a dumb cookery show about the time I was a year old. We were both eating takeout pizza since we were fatigued from work and school. And I came to the realization that this was my life. Tiny, keep quiet, dull, but mine. No drama, no celebrity on social media, simply being there. However, my parents then made an effort to get in touch with me. Emails were the first thing, similar to several emails. Subject lines like, please read this, and we need to talk were the first ones from my parents. And we committed a grave error. I paid them all no attention. Paula also saw them. On her tablet, I occasionally forget to check out of my email, and we share Netflix. Then they began phoning Paula all the time. At first, she didn't inform me. When I was finally feeling better, I didn't want to tamper with my head. However, she sat me down with this serious expression on her face one evening after her shift. It turns out that Mom made an extremely bad mistake. My parents gave her a college money, do you recall? In less than a year, she did indeed blow through it. The crazy thing isn't even that. After just one semester, Mom left college and told my parents she was taking classes online, but in reality, she was using their money to try her hand at being an influencer. Purchased shouts and followers. For her, the full want to be famous bundle was insufficient. She began acting in the same way that she had with me. This time, however, she specifically targeted my dad and made up an entire false narrative about how he had behaved inappropriately against her, complete with artificial intelligence-generated proof. Claimed that he had been purchasing her silence with the college funds. But the bit that's truly screwed up, on this occasion, she was careless. I believe I became too confident, began showcasing the AI-generated content to those who were really familiar with the technology. Someone brought out the unmistakable indicators of AI manipulation. You are familiar with the little bugs that programs leave behind? They didn't stop there, though. She lost it when my dad stopped giving her money. Began sharing all of this information about him online in an attempt to get him canceled or something. Even made an attempt to engage my mother, claiming to be aware of everything. This is the point at which karma appeared. M was unaware that detecting technology had advanced much in the 2 years after she pulled this stunt on me. After looking at her proof, an IT specialist my dad recruited for his company saw all the indications that AI was controlling the entire deck of cards, began to disintegrate. People began to doubt her account. After that, they began to reflect on what she had done to me. The original, unedited copies of several of her images were even uploaded when someone discovered earlier cached versions of her social media postings where she had made mistakes. In addition to being distraught by what M was doing to them, my parents were also devastated by their eventual realization of what they had done to me. They discovered that Paula and I shared a residence. M began attempting to get in touch with me after telling everyone that I had left the country. Paula showed me every communication they sent. They were a complete mess. My mother was experiencing panic episodes. Dad had trouble falling asleep. Their goal was to put things right. To make amends for their actions, they will stop at nothing. To be honest, I was relieved that they were in pain. What a disaster that is. Although I was happy that my own parents were experiencing some of what I had, I felt nothing at all, and reading their frantic texts no longer even infuriated me. I essentially didn't know them. Right now, Paula suggested that I speak with them. I didn't want to go on, but they said it may help. I had created this new existence for myself. Without all that turmoil, without them. Why should I allow them to ruin that? Then M arrived at my parents' house in tears and said she needed assistance. Said she would make amends and apologized for getting carried away. In fact, my parents began to trust her once more. Do you think that's possible? I made the decision to return at that point. Not for closure, not for them, or whatever nonsense people say. I returned because I was tired of allowing her falsehoods to ruin people's lives. I kept my arrival a secret from everyone. Paula helped me organize things, but she thought I was insane. By then, I knew enough about technology to be competent. I started by purchasing one of those little covert cameras. Just a simple one with audio and video recording capabilities. I tested it with Paula's help to make sure it wasn't too evident. Just in case, I also configured my phone to capture backup audio. Paula informed me that M was once more residing at my parents' place, performing the entire performance of the remorseful cousin. She continued to post on social media about her healing process or whatever, But now she was including ambiguous statements regarding my dad's improper behavior. Classic M is retaining all of her choices. I knew my folks would be at work, so I picked a Tuesday afternoon to arrive. Wanted them out of the way yet. After everything, it was strange to meet her face to face when M opened the door. She was wearing these pricey clothing and had altered her hair, most likely purchased with my college funds, but that deceptive expression in her eyes was just that. She made an effort to look surprised, began performing her entire shaky victim act. However, I simply stood there composedly. Coming in are 2 years of treatment. Clutch, I suppose. I wanted to talk, I said. That's all. Just chat. No screaming. No accusations. She attempted to indicate she was going to contact the police, but I believe she became alarmed by my composure. She opened the door for me. We were sitting in the kitchen, the same space where we had done our schoolwork as children. I simply let her speak, permit her to dig her own tomb. Watched her narrative unravel while asking her basic questions. The finest aspect? In fact, she told it all. She was proud of it, not because she felt bad about it. She told me straight out that she did it because she was able to, as it was too simple. Said that certain Discord servers taught her all there is to know about AI technologies. Months were spent organizing everything. After that, she began boasting that no one could prove anything and that she was going to do the same to my dad. My word is against his, and the victim is always believed. At that point, I pulled out my phone and listened to the final 30 seconds of our chat. I wish I had a photo of her face at that precise time, you guys. In just zero point 0.2 seconds, she changed from feeling proud to feeling afraid. I had previously backed everything up to the cloud when she attempted to take my phone. That method was something I picked up in my IT studies. She broke down, but not in the way she usually does. Very horrible sobbing, pleading with me, not to show anyone. According to the tape, she made up everything about me and even offered to divide the remaining funds from the college fund, which was completely depleted. I just texted my folks to come home without saying anything. We were seated there when they arrived, 20 minutes later. I stopped them from having a total breakdown, played the entire tape for them. Everything. I acknowledged that she made up the first charge, boasted about the AI pictures, and had intentions to harm my dad in the same way. Everything. My mother vomited. I literally vomited up after running to the restroom. My dad sat there as if everything in his universe were falling apart, which I suppose it was. M made one final attempt to control the circumstance. Began claiming that she needed treatment, not punishment, and that she only did it because she was traumatized by the loss of her father and the abandonment of her mother. The entire "we're family" card was pulled. We're not relatives, I told her, staring her in the eyes. We weren't. I then forwarded the tape to her mother, my relatives, her friends, and everyone who had blocked me 2 years prior. I then forwarded it to the college. She stopped talking about how she had defrauded my parents of the tuition money. The results were essentially what you would have expected. When M's mother eventually arrived, she informed her that she was interrupting her. My parents attempted to file charges, but there wasn't much legal support because, in theory, M had never demanded money from them. Instead, she had tricked them into doing so. My parents pleaded for pardon. Pleading. But what do you know? I was unable to provide it to them. I couldn't. Perhaps that makes me a horrible person. I told them that although I no longer hated them, I also didn't want them in my life. The last I heard, M works in retail and lives with some odd housemates. No one wants to interact with her on social media, despite her attempts to restart. It turns out that people dislike learning that they were duped. I returned to Paula's residence, returning to my tranquil life, my IT studies, and my tiny group of new acquaintances who are unaware of or indifferent to my history. Though they are becoming less regular, I still occasionally have nightmares involving cameras and myself. Paula advises me to take pride in the way I manage things, claims I received justice without turning becoming one of them. I'm not aware of that. Sometimes I'm not sure if I'm better or worse than her since I exposed her. But what do you know? I am at liberty. Really? In the right way, I can no longer be harmed by M, not able to harm anybody else. And that's sufficient. Edit. Holy cow, this went viral. Go through my inbox. Second edit. I appreciate all the rewards. but please don't spend too much money. Instead, make a donation to groups that support victims of online abuse. Third edit. Yes, I nearly forgot. After the recording became viral, Sarah got in touch, sent me a lengthy, heartfelt note expressing her regret for not believing me, her daily thoughts of me, and her want to get back in touch and make amends. She also said that she is currently single. I didn't read her. If she's unmarried, that's great. I'm already in love with a stunning woman who even Paula finds attractive, and life is amazing for anyone experiencing a similar situation. It improves, better perhaps, but not flawless.